Hello, welcome to Just Play Tabletop Wargaming. I'm Ritchie,
And I'm Ian.
and we're here today to review the Warhammer Age of Sigmar core rules for Age of Sigmar 3, Dominion, V3, whatever you want to call it. And mainly we're going to concentrate today on our opinions of it, really, right? Like what we think of the changes, the new things that have come about. Obviously we're not going to read the whole thing through in full, but yeah, we'll chat about all the big changes because there's a ton of them, and I don't know, I'm in love with it. I think it's fantastic, and I haven't got to speak to Ian really about this yet, as is normal. Ian's the busiest I've ever known him in his entire life right now. I messaged him today, can I talk? He said, you can have 15 minutes at 2 o'clock. And that was his actual reply to me. I was like, oh my word, I'll find someone else to help, thanks. So it's good. I can't wait to hear what you've got to say about it, to be honest, mate, because, I'm massively into it, right? Like, I'm so into it, I think more than you. And they can put anything out for me. I'm always I love change. So even if it's just little bits or whatever, we'll play for this little bit, and in 3 years we'll play another one, right? So they can't get it wrong for me. But yeah, I can't wait to hear what you've got to think about it all, mate.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm really excited about it. Like, I also I believe, like, in a lot of games like this, sometimes change for change's sake is good. Like, I would have no problem if they took a bunch of common units and made them 1,000,000 points each once a season and dropped a bunch of other stuff down to cheap just to change things about. And I think this edition's a bit of a mix of that. I think everything's, a lot of it is done to do some new interesting stuff. I think some of it is change for change's sake, but that's okay as well. But yeah, I think it'll be a very different game afterwards. Looking forward to playing it.
Yeah, me too. So, before we go any further, guys, hopefully you enjoyed this video, and if you do, please, give us a like, subscribe, and comment away, what you've thought of it if you're watching back, and everybody who's joined up in the chat, thank you. As you can see, I had Ian lovely set up on his video capture import, and as soon as I changed scene, it didn't like it anymore, so I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. But thanks for sticking with us while we got ourselves organised. Hopefully you can see and hear us all fine now. Well, as you can see, we've got the core rules up in front of us. We're going to take a flick through this, really to remind us of all the things that have gone on and the changes as we go through it. So, first one that come up, right? I don't know what you thought about this. The player's code, right? And I think, in general, the change to Age of Sigmar, like, as a whole, like, the attitude towards it is so different to what it was before. Like, however many years ago, there was 4 pages, it was about fun, we were looking at our reflections in mirrors to do things, and it's slowly moved away from that, but it's moved like massively away from it in this edition, right? From how the rules are written to what I thought was a bit odd when I was reading, like, on page 3 or whatever, don't cheat. I'm like, okay, this is an interesting
sort of like a little bit. Yeah, it's like a little bit. It's actually a little bit competitively focused in it, and I think it's. I mean, I do think it feels a bit out of place in a lot of ways, but I also don't think there is anything wrong with it either. Like, I do think that a lot of gamers, me included, can sometimes do with being reminded just what we all think is a good game is about. And I don't think there's anything in here that is contentious, other than never complaining about your bad and good luck, because if you can't do that, why are you even playing war games? Like, literally part of the game.
Got to complain.
But yeah, everything else in there is good. Like, there's a few things in here. What I find interesting as well is some of this, like, I wonder how much it's aimed at, like, people who are really new to the hobby, for whom some of these things might not be obvious. Like, one of them, for me, that stands out is ask permission before touching any of your opponent's miniatures. Is, people who are new to that, like, it doesn't bother me. Someone picks up my models as long as they're being careful, but a lot of people don't like it. And you don't know whether someone's, got a model that's got a dodgy join on it that might fall off, someone grabs your dragon and your wing falls off or something, and it's an accident, or you haven't varnished them or whatever. So it's nice to ask people before you just grab the models, especially if you don't know them. I think some of that kind of stuff is just it's a nice thing to have. It's a nice thing to show that they're thinking outside the rules.
It was just like, from this to how it's written with all the the 1.0 we've got here and onwards, and people love. I've already not love or say people have already very got into quoting the numbers and all that. I've listened to all the reviews.
Section this.
For me, and give or take all this. Obviously the rules are written well better, right? And they've made a massive effort to do it, and they must be mega proud of it, right? They've obviously spent so much time doing it. For me, I'm not one of those people get worked up about rules disputes or gets into them or this is written like this. It's like, okay, they're going to think of it other than not. Something will get said or it won't. Someone will rule it or they won't. So it's never been a thing that's bothered me particularly. So it's, I guess, I felt like that'd be more your thing, right? You read loads more rule sets than me. Loads of games, etc.
For me, it's just about I work in IT, right? So a big part of a lot of things we do is just making things easier. Particularly when you talk about documentation and that kind of stuff, it's just making things easier to understand, removing barriers to communication and removing any complexity you can, particularly when it's very easy to remove the complexity.
Mm-hmm.
And page numbers are an example of this, right? When you say it's in the rules, page 47, right? That's an easy way you communicate how someone can find something. And this is just the next thing along of that. And, it's not hard to number your rule sections. It's actually incredibly easy. And so there's no reason not to do it if it improves the ability to communicate over rules even slightly. And, when people say, how do I fix this? And people say, well, if you look at section 4.3.8, you'll see the answer. And people go, oh, yeah, it's a great thing. I want to say it's an obvious thing. It's other games with more clarified rule sets and, every lawyer in existence has been doing this forever. So, it certainly isn't revolutionary, but it's nice to see.
It's just not a thing we see them do, though, right? And we certainly have
it's nice to see
in this game.
Yeah, I think one of the complaints people make about Games Workshop, a lot, me included, is that, look, a lot of the problems with Games Workshop games are solved problems. They've been solved by other games companies, even that came along after Games Workshop years and years ago. So it's crazy that they don't do some of this stuff. And it's nice to see them starting to catch up, and it's nice to see this stuff getting in there. So yeah, good job.
Yeah, it's bossing it, and I love what do they call them, the designer commentary or whatever as well that they put in.
Yeah.
I thought there could be more than that though. There's loads of times I've read a rule and be like, and then look to the right, to see something, or look to the left and there's not been anything there. And I thought, well, that would have been something I thought might need explaining, but
yeah, I do think. I think the book falls a little bit into the trap of some of the designer commentary actually should have been part of the rule, right? So in section 1.3.2, keywords, right? It says the sidebar for that is clarifying that blood letter means the same as blood letters with an S on the end. This is always a problem Age of Sigmar's had, and 40K's had it as well. Just putting the S on the end of a keyword. And that's not really a piece of designer's commentary. That's actually a rule. That's part of the rule. The S on the end of a thing doesn't mean anything. And really, there's quite a few things I've read. I couldn't reel them all off the top of my head. But when I read through this, when I was reading those sidebars, some of them I felt were superfluous and they were filling up the space, which is fair enough. You've got to do that. But some of them felt like they probably should have just been in the rule to have been more clear. But ultimately, I think, if you consider this as a step forward, it's a step forward. So it's it's a nitpicky thing, that I think. So
yeah, no, that's good. It's good. It's boss. It's just so cool. Anyway, so let's get through to some of the stuff that you feel free to think there's anything I've missed. I suppose coherency is the first one here, right? We've got that up on the screen right now. That is the first most discussed one as well. How do you think that's going to affect the game then?
I think this is the single biggest change and most impactful thing to the way we played the game before. In the edition, and I also actually think it's the worst change in the book as well, as it happens. Like, so
The worst,
Age of Sigmar,
like, not from a why they
mechanically the worst. Yeah, the worst implemented change, right? So like, this is copied from 40k, like word for word, right?
Okay.
It's the same change, and in 40k it was decent. You know, it made sense. I think in Age of Sigmar, models have always had this problem in Age of Sigmar where when their reach is less than the base size of the unit, the unit's crap. It's like a universal thing you can look at. You know, if you've got a reach of 1 inch and your base size is bigger than 1 inch, the unit struggles to perform in combat. And, you know, you've always had this problem where cavalry have always had 1 inch reaches for some crazy reason, even though they've all got lancers and all this kind of stuff. And it's always been difficult. And now that we are and some units could get round that by having a lot of movement or just rolling a high charge or whatever. Yeah. They can't even do that now. They've got to be in 2 ranks when they're over 6 models. And it just leaves so many units out in the cold for playability reasons. And I've always thought that base size is like an out of game thing. Base size is not like a stat. It's not a characteristic. It's just something that I'm going to guess is decided based on the physical size of the model once it's been sculpted. So letting that affect the game so much has never been something I've liked. And they've actually, with this change, they've made it affect it more. And there's a bunch of units you look at now and you're just like, this unit just isn't going to work very well. Cavalry, are the big one, obviously, trying to make them line up in 2 ranks when they've got more than 5 models. But it does achieve some great stuff.
That's not to say it can't be done, is it? It's about that next, like, oh, look at this funny formation I can do. Look at this funny formation. Oh, it's this formation. And like, they're not.
And if you look at the diagram that's on the screen and on page 3 in the book there, look at the amount of arrows that they're showing there. Like, is that something you really want people to be thinking about when they're playing a fun game and moving models around the board? Is maintaining that amount of arrows like that? Like, and when you take that out to its conclusion, you start thinking about like how you line up a cavalry unit, right? You can get these sort of like T-shaped wedge formations where lots of the cavalry can get in, but none of us want to measure like that when we're playing a game. We all do it, particularly at the high end of competitive. We do everything to get these little tiny advantages, but I don't want to. No one really wants to do all that silly stuff. It's just a thing we have to optimize on to make the game work. It would be much nicer if we could just use them in some sensible formation. And when I first saw the coherency rules, I was expecting a melee change that said, like 40k, if you're touching something that's in range, you can also fight. And I was quite disappointed that that wasn't the case. So,
which is why it's better in 40k, right?
Which is why it's better in 40k, yeah, because it works fine in 40k. It's great. I think there's a couple of things. I think in Age of Sigmar, the number should have been 10, not 6, for going up to the next size. So you could have got something like this. Rarely hurts units that are already bad, like big guys, trolls, and stuff. They normally come in 3s, right? As soon as you go to 6 of them, half of your unit, which is like 140 points or more worth of models, can't fight. Because loads of those units have got 1 inch reaches as well. And, it puts them in a little block.
There's a side of this, isn't there, in the how is the army's going to pan out on the board, though, right? The reinforcement rule, which is, it ties into this quite a lot, doesn't it? Where you can only reinforce 3 times. It has to be battle line, and which units are you going to reinforce? Can you reinforce them? I've been writing Sylvaneth lessons for Saturday, and I can't reinforce Colonel Hunters, so that's it. I mean, 3s, that's okay. And people will change what they take because of this, right? And
you can work around it, absolutely. I guess what I'm saying
Sorry, I was going to say, like, when you said this to me the other day about the base size, and I was like, you know what, that's spot on. Like, why is it having an impact on the game? A Goblin's not on a 32 mil base, I guess, because he's tiny. And he looks better on a 25 mil base, and we can't jam Space Marines on them anymore, because they don't look good. They're too big now. Yeah. So I thought that was a boss point. Like, And yeah, I was like, yeah, he's right. Why does it make such a difference in the game? But
and if it's not something,
these are the rules, and I don't think it's like it's not ruined anything. It's just we've got a hell of a lot of changes because of it, and maybe it's a bit of a weird thing to be changing your army because, right?
And I think about like a lot of things, and anyone who's followed the podcast for a long time will know this is something I always think about as well. Is that I always think about what impact this has on new players, and I always imagine someone in our shop trying to teach a new player to play the game right, and they've got a unit of 10 cavalry, or they've got a unit of 6 trolls, or whatever, and you say, and they move them into combat. You've told them they can't go in a line because of coherency. They stick them in a block, and you go, oh, actually, if you do this funny thing with them, where all your horses are sideways instead of forwards, and some of your horses are in the gaps, you can actually get them all into combat. Who looks at that and goes, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, that's like more of an immersion thing, isn't it? Like if they knew they may, they're either gonna learn that stuff because they want to, or they're gonna not, right? But yeah.
I just think that if you're designing a game, you know you've got no control over like base sizes, because obviously you're not going to be able to influence the models when you're designing stats. If it was me, I just wouldn't design mechanics into the game that ruin things I might design because they happen to come on a bigger base size or something. I just think it's a bit of a shame, really. But like Takaloy saying there, just unintuitive for new players. It is, you know.
Right though, stop and making lines of models though.
Yeah, good change. Same reason it was at 40k. Yeah, stringing out is again another counterintuitive thing.
Yeah.
When you're showing new players how to screen or how to line things up, or even worse, how to do some of the stuff that we've done, you know, like where you've got one bit of a unit here and one bit of a unit over there, and they're stringing all the way back to a buff character who's actually 24 inches away from the front model. All that's dumb. All that being gone is great.
Yeah.
We could have had both.
Ridiculous.
We could have had that and not the combat problems, I guess, is the shame. But, you know, at least it's not all negative change. It's just could have been better.
Yeah, I know what you're saying. Right, what else we got in here? There's just some endless spell changes here as well, hasn't there? How you can only have one for each wizard now. So bit of a subtle difference, but not too many.
Yeah. You skipped ahead a little bit there in the order, or is that actually up here somewhere in the book?
No, it's just there. It says your army can conclude one endless spell for each wizard in your army and one invocation for each priest.
Yeah. I think, I've always hated endless spell change, and there's another change to this later on, which is also great. I think that endless spells are great, and I think the only times they've been good to date are when they've been abused for things they weren't really intended to do, like spamming them out on the board or whatever. It's just a good change,
This ties in massively to stuff that we'll get to later on as we flip through the book to make sure we don't miss everything, right? So
yeah.
All right, what else we got coming up? Well, this is just about measuring distances, dice, and things like that. So yeah, I think there's anything in here. You got anything in your notes?
No, I don't think there's anything significant in that part. That's sort of worth talking about.
Mm-hmm. So
something that I do like is, you know, when we get down to starting to talk about keywords and stuff, which I think is the page we're on now, is this sort of attempt to clarify when stuff happens and what's an important word, right? So the way they've got these like bolded words, like highlighted in grey sort of thing, when they're talking about what stuff means, I think that is really good. Certainly it's not consistent throughout the book, right? Like when you read it, you're like, why did they bold that bit, or why did they bold it once and then not again? So, you know, it is a bit Games Workshop-y in the fact you can see they've tried to do a thing and then just not quite done it properly in a lot of ways, but it gets the points across still. It gets what it gets. You know, it highlights things like start of the phase, end of the phase, and all that kind of stuff, which in most cases that I've read at least clarifies lots of complicated things like strike first and strike last effects. You know, it removes the ambiguity.
Yeah, I think this is boss, you know, like you say, like this example over here, you know, it's explaining what a starter phase is, what an end of phase is, you know, what happens during the phase when you do these things, you know. terms that we're going to see on War Scrolls and whatever, throughout, the rest of the play in the edition as well. So I think we got the simultaneous effects one as well. That's the same, isn't it? Where you resolve them in order you play. I was looking for the thing where it triggers, but that's a lot later on, isn't it? Is that here now in the triggered effects?
So the triggered effects one is the first quite big interactivity change, I think.
Yeah.
In that now you can only trigger one thing that rolls on a 6, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Which I think is a great change in terms of reducing complexity and ambiguity. It's also a good change in terms of reducing the stacking of abilities, which is a thing they've clearly gone for throughout. It must
allow them a bit more freedom design and stuff in the future as well.
It does. Right? Yeah, because you don't have to worry, and you don't get those armies that are traditionally the best armies are the ones that can stack a lot of stuff together. To make something happen, to make something particularly good and all that kind of stuff. And armies that were like fine, but didn't have a way to overstack something to be crazy, traditionally weren't very good.
Yeah.
And by eliminating that, you just open the game up. You really change it for the haves and have-nots. I think, unfortunately, there's a lot of casualties of this, though. Like an example for me is, you have got some books. Obviously, we're going to get new books this edition, but you've got some books where all they do is stack stuff. Like that's the only thing they do, and every command ability that they've got available to them is the same. And therefore, if you take multiple heroes, they're just sort of they don't have an option to do something different or to make you play smarter. You just can't use one of the abilities. So I think it's a little bit of a shame in that way, but overall, I think it's a good change.
Yeah, it's spot. I like it. Let's stop some of this silly stuff that's going on. It's good. And then they've done a quick clarification of the shooting or fighting once. This is just another example of look, you can only do this ever. You get to fight twice, shoot twice. That's it. No more. No, can you use X and Y together? They just knock that on the head here with the core rule to stop it happening again.
I do wonder how long it'll be before you get this unit can fight again, ignoring rule 1.6.5. That's exactly the kind of thing I would expect from the first new book of the edition, or something. But I think the other thing to note on triggered effects as well is it has a bit of a weird interaction with the negative versions of these as well. So when you get witch elves or something like that. That's say you do a wound on an unmodified roll of a 6, and then you get something else that says it does it on a 6. Depending on how they're worded, you can actually cancel out the ability of the other person whose turn it isn't if they've got a defensive on a 6 ability. I haven't looked through all of them. There's actually some order of operations to the dice rolls later that make that work a bit better. But in theory, if things are not quite worded, using unmodified or not, you can have negative and positive abilities cancelling each other out as well, which I'm not sure is intended. But
I listened to I can't remember what the guys are called, Vince and that Woman Weekly on the way to work today, and I was driving though, so I couldn't see whatever the diagram was. But I think how he was saying was there's a roll, and because they say there's a roll, and then it's then you apply modifiers, then there's a modified roll or whatever. You say this is the roll, so Archeon's thing works now, and then we have modifiers and whatever, and then there's an unmodified roll which triggers this next bunch of stuff. I'm probably explaining that terrible. It's the first point he talked about in his video.
It's clarified when we get to the dice rolling section. It's clarified. So basically, when you first roll a dice, that at that point the dice is classed as unmodified.
Yeah.
Right? And so then the defensive abilities trigger.
Yeah.
And then the rest of them after that, after it's happened, then your offensive abilities trigger. But that's why I'm saying I haven't read through every ability that triggers on a 6, but I suspect there's probably some, depending on whether they're worded unmodified or not, that will be a casualty of this, particularly from older books before they use that language. Or might be better because of this, if it's the other person's
I think it helps all the stuff Archeon's one is fine, for example, and I think
with the staves and the one with
example.
Yeah. But interesting change anyway. Impacts a lot of things.
No, it's good.
potentially.
Don't think we've got much on this page here. We're talking just deployment and whatnot. The summons unit one. Sorry, apologies. That is. Oh no, it's summoned units, not summon models. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I like about this rule though is it very very clearly clarifies with a keyword in grey. A reserve unit is anything that's set up in a location other than the battlefield. So that might simplify some war scrolls. Say, instead of saying any unit that was set up in a place other than on the battlefield, that is, just clarifies it down. And the same for a summoned unit, because we've always had these problems with summoned units where people aren't sure whether they count as battle line or not, and what they count for in terms of victory points and all that. And we've got like a nice little keyword for them now.
Yeah.
That will hopefully be used to alleviate problems in the future. Also, as well, I think on the terrain section just above that, they do the same thing with terrain features and open ground. They classify anything not a terrain as open ground, which should hopefully avoid any confusion around things that come in war scrolls in future as well. Like, while this model is in open ground, blah. Yeah. So it's just good to see them adding keywords to stuff. Not that it necessarily does anything in the book right now, but they're thinking about what is a thing that may need to be referenced in future.
Oh, cool. Hey to everyone in the chat as well. Got people joining, chatting away. Tom, hey. Tom's giving us some grief, saying we haven't mentioned him yet. It's terrible because he's on his night off. A couple of the play testers as well, guys who have helped make this great edition as well. So thanks to you guys. Right, where are we at now? Battle rounds.
Battle rounds, yeah. So this has got some changes in.
What have you picked out?
What's that?
What have you picked out?
So, well, like a lot of people, right? So I read this and I was like, the priority roll has gone back to a D6 on turn one. I was like, this is so good and exciting. And then in the match play section, it's still who has the least amount of drops. So that's good. Priority roll, which is that exactly the same last edition actually, although I think it was in the GHB last time, wasn't it, or whatever. But I think the actual change here though is obviously the command points.
Yeah, this is the next big thing they seem to have gone for, hasn't it? Right, like we've got the starting command points, and the person who takes the first turn gets 1, and the person who takes the second turn gets 2. And this is the start of all the things that I want to see change in the game. Really, I'm really into. I think they've got a good system with the priority roll that only needs a little bit more things like this. Who goes first, who goes second in it to make it really good. So, because obviously the double turn, as people call it, is the biggest turn off for people who get into this game, right? How many times you have that chat with someone who's like, this is nonsense, why has this guy got 2 turns? And, I don't disagree in a lot of situations, but they're so close to be able to put a few things in that could just make it even better than it is, for everybody to understand.
Did this confuse you when you first read it, like whether this 1/2 command point thing was every turn or just the start of the game?
No, I just thought it was every turn. Yeah,
because it's in the it says starting command points, that section.
Yeah,
and then it immediately refers back to it in the next section where it's saying actually that's every turn. I thought that was a bit confusing. Then I think starting implied I was looking for how many you get in a turn.
Yeah.
It didn't really.
And it is it says it in the first line, doesn't it? But I guess the title of it's a little odd, I suppose. Yeah.
But it's interesting. I mean, especially with all the other stuff. The new command abilities have been mentioned once or twice in Warhammer community articles recently. So having the ability to use those an extra time is a pretty good compensation. Like +1 save if you don't get the first turn is pretty good compensation.
Yeah.
At the very least, and it's not the only thing. So it's good to see. Good to see that starting to change.
Yeah, I guess that maybe something comes up later. This start command point, see what it means now. This is before we get to hero phase, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like an in-betweeny thing before anything starts, isn't it? Right? There's some command points, right? Let's get on with it now. So I guess if you needed to do things at the start of the hero phase, you've got the command points before that. Maybe some stuff like that. But right, so yeah, look, this is what we've got about command points. I'm sorry, I've got this screen a little bit too small for me to see very well. You know what? I've actually got a book here.
Yeah, I'll read it out from my PDF.
Yeah, go ahead. You take this one a minute while I have a little get my book out.
Yeah, so command points, so command abilities. Nice little clarification here. We've now got a thing about issuing and receiving as keywords. So one friendly model issues the command, one friendly unit receives the command, and the things that interact with that, like the monster roll stops you receiving commands, for example. And lots of things can now issue commands. So unit champions can issue commands to their own unit, which I think actually I don't think I like. Actually, because they've made it so heroes can do it within 12, generals can do it within 18, totems can do it within 18, which is kind of weird, but works for a lot of armies. I guess maybe standard bearers might start getting the totem keyword more now or whatever. But they've done this thing where all your heroes are issuing commands now, and it's really important. But then, like, every unit in the game can just issue commands to itself. So, like, I'm not really sure. All of a sudden, it's just super easy to issue the commands. It just seems a little bit like too easy to get them.
Yeah, they want to think it's like that's cool, like, because this is meant to be such a big part of it. You know, I quite like that it can be going on anywhere. You know, everybody's in it. This unit's in it. That unit's in it. From
that point of view, from that point of view, it is. But like, if we're making it so that you can only do a limited amount, and heroes are really important. All of a sudden, where 100-point heroes have always been crappy, and we're making it that they're really important now because you need them to issue commands to units to make the units better. And I was like, this is really cool, but then units can issue it to themselves. So like, whatever.
Not all
of them. Like zombies, notably, don't have a leader, for example. Mm-hmm. And it's definitely a change. It just seems like a bit of a shame, when we're like, it felt like they're about to do something that's really hero related, and then it's just not a little bit, like it takes some good tactical play opportunities out of the game. I mean, I suppose on the other hand, what it does do, which is good, unfortunately, is it stops, shooting armies, just killing all your heroes. You can never use a command again. So it's probably good from a competitive play point of view. Just seem less so from a cool factor point of view to me, I guess.
No, yeah, that's fair. And it's cool, like, so a model can only issue one command in the same phase. A unit cannot receive more than one command in the same phase, and you can't use the same command more than once in each phase. That's like all good stuff. Catches everything. I like that. Yeah, you might need multiple heroes, or you might need these unit champions if you've only got one, bigger hero or something like that. If you're going to be able to spend all these points, like, okay, it's like over different phases, so you probably don't struggle that much. It's only per phase, it's not per turn. But some of the phases
are
quite busy.
It does, and it adds, it gives you the. It does add some stacking ability, which puts a lot of value on, like, all command abilities, even, I want to say, used to be in the hero phase, and then over the last couple of years, a lot of them have gone to the combat phase.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them enter the charge phase, some of them the shooting phase, that kind of thing. And now that there is a spread of them, it means that there's a lot of value in the ones that can stack now, because you generally can't stack stuff in the game at all. So like Nagash uses this in the hero phase, buffs his whole army, and then they can stack +1 save or +1 to hit on top of the rerolls that Nagash has given them. And stuff, which is, adds a little bit more power into some things in the game.
Whereas you might not wanted to buff a unit, in the hero phase for something that happens in the combat phase later, maybe. Now it's like, I will do it, and then later I will get to do this one on it as well. So, I see what you're saying.
Great change overall. Just, again, stop stacking. Good. Unfortunately, again, a lot of books get really victimized by this, because a lot of books, some books that are a little bit weakly designed, Seraphon's a good example for me, is that they just have lots of the same command ability on different units that literally does the same thing. Lots of things that trigger on a 6, lots of things that give you +1 to hit. And now, you're not going to stack them. You're just not going to take the models in the same army. But, sometimes you have to, and then you've got useless abilities, which I think is a fine trade-off for stopping the stacking. But some armies suffer from this, whereas armies that have got more diverse command abilities that do lots of different things, where they don't have to worry about stacking or working in different phases, get a lot of benefit out of this, or at least no negative.
I know something you probably read while I was trying to find the page. They go at the end of the battle round, right? So that's it. You know, we've got this pool. Every battle round, we're spending them on my turn, we're spending them on your turn. It's a whole other little bit of game that we've got going on now, isn't it? So, and again, helps make the first and second turn thing more important, doesn't it, as well, you know, because of this extra command points. You like that it's like this now, we're not, you know, hoarding them and saving them up for later.
Yeah, I think they definitely ran... Some armies generate dumb amounts of command points, like Skaven, for example, right? When Skaven were dominant, one of the many stupid things they did was they just generated like 5 CP a turn for no particular good reason, and they didn't even spend them all most of the time, and then, you know, they could casually just, you know, 6 every single run roll 1 turn or whatever, and it was just stupid. And now that the command abilities are limited, I think in a lot of ways it stops armies like doing like excessive amounts of things. It stops stacking in a way, stops stacking command points. In a lot of ways, I do think there's some army builds that suffer from it a lot. You know, like Slaanesh, for example, have got a bunch of stuff that gives you a load of command points at the start of the game, which completely doesn't interact with this at all.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways, just forces you to spend them all, which, you know, you want to spend them all on turn 2 in most games, right? So if you start on turn 1 with them, it's not great. But again, overall, I think it's good. You know,
there's so much stuff that I hope they catch with whatever they do with changes, right? With FAQs, with War Scroll rewrites, or whatever they decide to release. You know,
I'm not expecting a lot from the General's Handbook, to be honest. I'm not expecting all the armies that are suffering from this, or that are suffering like issues because of this. I'm sure they'll catch some of them, but I'm not expecting a lot from that. Like the 40k version of it was, surely they're going to fix a bunch of these things that are broken in 9th edition, carrying over from 8th edition. They just fixed none of it, and I don't expect them to put effort into that in this either. I think some armies will be waiting for a book to come out to have some of this stuff fixed. But again, it's not that bad. I mean, it's like Slaanesh generating a load of CP on turn 1. You're just not going to play that build of the army, right? There's always going to be some casualties from changes, and I think overall, I think this is good. You know, it's one less thing to track, which means you use them.
I feel it's a bit different to 8th to 9th, though. Like, 8th and 9th are the same game at its core, right? This isn't the same as the last one. You know, I feel like they've made, I don't know.
I think there's just as many.
Not bigger changes.
I guess
9th felt all about missions and stuff like that,
yeah,
you know.
That's only because 8th didn't have them, though. Like the game's still the same game, I think.
Yeah,
like, I don't know. I mean, I
don't think this is the same game, though. I think 8th and 9th are similar in normal gameplay, like how you move, how you shoot, how you do all that sort of stuff. Whereas this, I feel, is a lot different to 2nd in that way. So maybe they have got an eye on some of the stuff. Like, this is, I hope so anyway, right? Like, command pointers, for me, is clearly one of their, like, this is something, we're going to drop this now. Everyone's heads are going to be blown off. This is one of the big things we're into.
Yeah. Well, I like it. I mean, I think it, regardless of who it affects, and make some changes to some things, I think that, you know, there are some casualties to it. I think, you know, OBR can die in a fire as far as I'm concerned. Like, and you know, if they have to sucker up, so be it. I can't imagine them not making. I can't imagine them not making some change to OBR to make
that can't be missed, right?
I mean, I think part of the armies, it's a funny one, because if they let OBR use all the new command abilities, right, then you've just got one army that generates 12 command points a turn and has access to not only the expanded range they have on the War Scrolls, but also the new ones. So I don't think they're going to get access to all this kind of stuff.
Why? Like, Relentless Discipline is not command points.
Yeah, so what people are saying is OBR should have access to all this new stuff.
As well as Relentless Discipline, but Relentless Discipline won't get spent on this stuff, right? It'll just
But yeah, that's exactly my point. But that's what the OBR hopefuls are saying, is that there's a load of new stuff in this book. It's being touted as the big thing of the edition, and the entire army can't use it, which I think is correct because their army doesn't use any of this stuff. It doesn't.
Right.
You know,
Yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. Like they never did before. Why do they now?
Yeah. Can you imagine catapults with stand and shoot? You know,
Wouldn't do it.
like three
wouldn't do anything because units too close. So.
Well, no, I mean behind your line of skeletons, obviously, you know. So you know it's crazy. So yeah, the confusion, as Tackler's just said there, you know, OBR stuff is command abilities, but they use relentless discipline, not command points. How are the command abilities? So maybe there'll be some in between.
That's not aged well with this, has it? Like it doesn't, because I never thought of them as command abilities, right? It was like these are relentless discipline. They're doing their thing. It's nothing to do with this, but actually it does. Yeah. Yeah.
They're just going to FAQ it. So relentless discipline works as it always did, and unfortunately, OBR don't get all the new command abilities, which because they've got their own set. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, right. Fair enough. Well, next awesome thing we've got is, you got anything else on command abilities before we move on to heroic actions?
No, hero phase, heroic actions.
Yeah, let's have it then. So you get to pick one hero to perform a heroic action, and each player gets a command point if their general is on the battlefield. So that's the next part.
Like that.
You've got 2 or you've got 3 command points at this part, so they're starting to stack up quite nicely. And then we go into 4 heroic actions that you can carry out. So at the start of the hero phase, one of the first things you're going to do, you can carry out 1 heroic action tier below with a friendly hero, and the effect is treated in the same way as an effective ability for rules purposes. So some are a lot better than others, right? Like heroic leadership absolutely jumps out, right? 4+, you get an extra command point.
Yeah, or on a 2-up if your general's been slain.
Yeah, like sorry, we should say that we're doing this in both hero phases.
Both hero phases.
Yeah,
both hero phases. Yeah, I really like this. Interesting. It can only be used during this turn, that command point, so you can't keep it to the end of the battle round. But yeah, I mean that's obviously what you are gonna pick as your default action most of the time if one of the other ones isn't appropriate.
Yeah.
So yeah, you know, you're generating easily be generating, 3.5 command points on average a turn if you go in second, or 2.5 even if you go in first. That's a lot of CP.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And you can see why they have to stop stacking, right? Because if every army just gets triple CP every turn all of a sudden, and you can stack in the old way, there'd be so many armies that would be crazy bonkers as well, because they just have so much crazy stuff going on.
Oh, it's just something it's just something that needs to go, isn't it, really? So, heroic willpower is like so many ways on this one. This is the one that just lets you basically pretend to be a wizard for the turn, isn't it?
It lets you unbind. If it lets you unbind in the enemy turn, or in your turn, it lets you dispel an endless spell.
That's right, yeah.
I didn't like this to start with because I think if you're not paying for wizards, you shouldn't get to unbind stuff. Like, paying for wizards has got a very real point cost, and if you don't buy them, you shouldn't be able to unbind stuff. But then you look at these 4 actions and you think it would be a pretty poor turn if you wanted to choose this on any given turn most of the time.
A chance to unbind.
A chance to unbind with no bonuses.
Yeah.
Like I can't see picking this very often. I can see it being a little bit clutch sometimes and just like pulling it out the bag particularly for armies like Stonehorns, for example. Number of times I wished I could have just had 1 unbind attempt when I was playing Stonehorns. It was amazing. Yeah. But even then, Stonehorns rarely like the other abilities on this table, so I don't know. So yeah, this is the worst one on the table, but it's a cool thing to have in your toolbox, I think.
Next one's a beast, isn't it? Like, the finest hour, pick one friendly hero, add 1 to wound and attacks made by that hero until the end of the turn. And add 1 to save rolls for attacks that target that hero until the end of the turn.
Wound rolls for attacks, not and attacks, just wound rolls. Just 1.
Yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah, and you can't do it more than once a battle. Like, so on the one hand, if you look at a lot of heroes and the way a lot of the buffs stack up, like the +1 to wound on a lot of heroes in a lot of situations actually gets lost because you either can't stack or because, it already wounds on a 2 or it's already got a buff or something. So, but the +1 save, obviously, is great.
On a big beastie where where they've got an inflated save roll for some reason, you know.
Yeah. Or it's Kragnos and he's already got a 2-up, and you want to get a second charge off for him. Yeah, it's boss.
Yeah, boss. Yeah.
Or if they've got a reroll, if they got a reroll from something, you pick like Archeon as an example, and you give him reroll saves with your Chaos Sorcerer, and then you give him a 2-up save.
Yeah,
that was always good. Now you can do it without something to give him +1 save. You just got it. Yeah, very good.
The last one, a little heal. Yeah, I suppose it's okay.
I really like this one as well. I think a lot of the time, there's times when you particularly later in the game or mid game, when you might not necessarily want the command point, or you might not want to just roll a 4+ because it's only a 50-50. Whereas this, on most heroes, works on like a 10 or less.
Yeah.
On most heroes where they don't just go from 5 wounds to dead. This is like monsters you're looking at, really. Most of those big monsters are like bravery 10, right? So this is really heal D3 wounds. I don't know why there's a bravery roll associated with it. Like, I don't know why it didn't just say, like roll a dice, heal D3 wounds or something. It's not that powerful, but it seems a bit unnecessary. But I guess it's thematic.
Yeah.
Heroic and brave to get wounds back. But it's good, and particularly with some units, it stacks up as well, because some units already can heal themselves, or they regenerate a wound, or they have some leechy thing or whatever, and you can stack.
Do it in my turn, and it's 2d3.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, big flying monster. Took a beating, like flyer away, heal, go back in the turn after. You get some lucky rolls. You can go back in with 5-6 wounds, and carry on the game when you would have basically done nothing. So it's I really like heroic recovery. I think it's great.
Small thing, this, isn't it? Small addition. It's like very new, very different, but small.
I think
how big is its impact?
Yeah, I think the +1 save is particularly impactful. I would trade the whole table for just making shooting less good.
Yeah.
Because the main thing about it is the +1 save means your heroes might live through some shooting is the big thing for me, really. But yeah, it's nice. It's like they're not irrelevant decisions. They are ones that can matter. I do wish they were a bit less random, rolling on a 4+, bravery rolls for some things that might have a lower bravery. Like I'd rather just get rid of that and make it a little bit more consistent, personally, if it was me.
Yeah.
But I think it's another decision, and you do get to do it, 10 times a game, or at least 6 to 8 times a game. It's quite a lot of extra decisions that do make some micro improvements, and that's cool. More decisions in the game is good, and they're very quick decisions as well. I'm going to gain +1 save and wound. No crazy stuff. That's another reason I don't like the bravery roll. Like it's just messing about. Like I'll just heal these 2 wounds or whatever. But it's great. They're great. I like these. I think they're cool. Yeah.
Something you can expand on, you reckon? Feels like a battle tone thing that done it. You could add to this.
Yeah.
The other one, mainly I think this because of 40k, right? Where they do the chapter approved page and they put in extra secondaries or whatever they're called in 40k that you get to pick from. Yeah, and they've got obviously we've got that when we talk about match play later every battle round. You're picking a secondary sort of mission to do, and I think that's the type of thing maybe along with this that could.
Yeah, I like it. Add more in books. You can add more in. Obviously, we saw the General's Handbook preview, which has got some like new season rules in it. You could add them for a season, new heroic action options. So yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, it's good.
I'm just going to open my door because it's very, very hot in my office.
No worries. So Rally then is the hero phase command ability that we've got in there. So there's a couple through the different phases and turns of the game that you've got command abilities that you can use. So the one they've got in is Hero Rally. And again, remember, this is like a both turn thing. So usually at the start of the hero phase, the unit that receives this command must be more than 3 from all enemy units. Roll 1 dice. Each slain model for each slain model in that unit on a 6, you can return 1.
Yeah, I can't see using this very often at all.
Yeah, I agree. People don't ask very weak. This one. This gets some hype.
It's super weak,
Okay, is it clutch? Can it turn something around? Yes. Are you going to spend your command points on it?
6s? Yeah, can you roll 15 6s on some dice? Sure. but like it's only slain models, right? So if you've got a unit of 30 models that's gone down to 1, unless it's a clutch situation where you need 3 more models to take an objective, are you going to roll 29 dice on 6s, get 5 models back to a unit and turn it from 1 into 6 models? It doesn't have any impact. That doesn't have any impact. And if it's a unit of 30 that's lost 10, you're going to get less than 2 models back on average. So if it's still combat worthy and you're adding models back, it's not giving you any models back. So, and on top of that, you've got to be more than 3 from enemy units as well. So most of the time, you know, when a unit's took significant losses, that's normally in combat.
Yeah.
I can see some situations, you know, where maybe you've got near a shooting unit, you've been whittled down to the point where, you know, the 10 men you've got left can't even kill those 10 Arcanauts anymore, which is a thing that happens, and all you need to do is kill the 10 Arcanauts to get another unit through a screen or whatever. Maybe, again, clutch situation, sure, but general use, can't see this being used very often, really.
Yeah. It's I agree. Like, obviously, desperate times, it gets you out of something, you might give it a go, mightn't you? But it doesn't seem all that.
Yeah.
I wonder again, like, I think what made me think about this was the GHB spoiler again, which was the battalion that you had some guys in and they couldn't be targeted by the monstrous thing, you know, where you stopped them doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's like a monster hunter core battalion or something like that. I was like, oh, maybe like you could have battalions that, you know, are affected by rally more, you know, like super brave guys by whatever, or trolls get, you know, rally better.
That could be a special,
regenerate, you know, or something.
This unit gains +1 to rolls when it's issued with the rally command ability or something like that, you know, cool. But yeah, like general use, I don't think this has got that much. But again, you know, if you're getting so many command points, I think some armies, you know, all that stuff we said before, plus your cities of Sigmar, you've got more rolls to make for command points, and you end up with like 5-6 command points. You might have nothing else to spend it on.
Yeah.
So sometimes you might end up just dumping a command point into this for nothing else to do.
Maybe with what phase you're allowed to use stuff in and how many heroes you've got as well. You know, if you're just trying to spend them throughout the phases, it might be one that at least you've got one you can spend in your hero phase. And
I think there's arguments with like when you get some very expensive units as well. You know, let's say you're running like, I can't think of a good example right now. Let's say you had 6 Khorne Blood Crushers, but you would never run 6 of them anymore because they can't fit into combat. But as an example, let's say you've lost 4 of them, and they're 5 wound models, right? So rolling 4 dice, it's not outlandish to get 2 6s on 4 dice. It's much more than it is getting 15 6s on 20 dice. It's much more likely. So, you know, you just spike a little bit and you get quite a lot of models back. You know, Hail Mary and some command points at that is a bit more likely. I think, like Lee's just said in chat there, if I lost 4 Storm Fiends, that's probably been a better example than Blood Crushers. But yeah, you lose 4 Storm Fiends, 6-7 wound models each, 4 dice. Even if you get one of them back, you're probably actually reasonably happy with that. I guess there's some less common units that it's a bit better on, but yeah, generally I don't think you're going to see it very much.
Yeah. Samuel's saying about like, as you're saying, if they lost the battle shock and they're not slain, then they're not slain, are they? They've already ran away. Seems to make sense. Seems to make sense to me. I can't confirm that. I'd have to read the rule, but. Seems to make sense.
It says they flee, but then I think it says models that flee count as being slain. Oh. So, you know, and thematically, if they did flee, right, like that'll get FAQ'd, hopefully. If they did flee, this ability would make it actually makes a lot more sense telling them to come back and fight
get back.
Them, and instead of telling them to get up off the floor after they've just been stood on by a giant. You know, it actually makes more sense if they fled than if they've been slain. So
the old commissar and the bolt pistol.
Yeah. Well, like Tom's just said there, you know, rally on a unit of 3 man crushers. That's also a fair shout. If they're down to one model, just rolling 2 dice. If either of them's a 6, you get a whole giant back. Maybe less bad than using it on a unit.
You've got command points to spend on, right? Like.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. The movement phase, then, are we talking about that next?
Yeah, that's up next, yeah.
Yeah. So, as as suspected, there's some clarifications on the movement types in these rules, right? Which particularly in their interaction with Blood Knights. So I think we all saw this coming after the Blood Knights things. But normal movers are. What's that? Yeah, it's just
wasn't that obvious?
Yeah, it should have been to most people. The normal move has always been confusing because it was never, although it meant a lot in a lot of situations that cleared things up, it was actually confusing in others. And they've changed it now. You can say you are either going to make a normal move or a run or a retreat. There's no move anymore in the movement phase. It's just one of those three things. And you just go through with those things. A normal move is every model moves in the same way as usual. A retreat is every model moves in the same way as you used to retreat before. And a run is that. I think and obviously with Blood Knights this works because the Blood Knights rule says you may make a normal move. Ordinarily, you wouldn't be allowed to choose normal move, and the Blood Knight scroll says you can. Maybe not the least ambiguous thing, certainly, but it's very obvious how it's supposed to work.
How good do you think Blood Knights are?
I still don't think they're that great. I think that
we'll snip that one. God, the amount of people buzzing off them now. We'll see. Interesting. I'm the same. They look sound. I think they benefit quite a bit. Never mind just from this rule. I think they got like that stat line at +1 save from nowhere and bits like that, haven't they? I think so.
Yeah, the +1 save's good, and they
work in fives well. They're good enough.
They work well in
fives.
That entire allegiance is just built around one artifact, right? That gives them everything on the board +1 damage for a turn, pretty much. And then on that turn, Blood Knights become good, and the rest of the turns I'd rather have them been more expensive and tougher. It's like 5 vampires. Like a lot of things I say over time, I'd rather them just be more expensive and more badass, but they're not.
You can't run when you retreat.
That is a big change, actually. Sorry,
that's a big change.
Yeah, because I mean,
I don't think it's. Sorry, I was going to say it's not something that matters to make the game better or worse, right? It's like, okay, you can't do that anymore, but it was something you'd done so often,
Yeah, there was no reason not to do it, and I actually never liked it. I never thought it made any sense. Like, you do running instead of shooting or charging. You don't do it. It's not like a freebie because you're disengaging.
Yeah, and if it wasn't a freebie, it was like the disengage and get an objective thing, wasn't it? And you'd also run it sixes and things like that. So yeah, super common tactic, come up loads, can't be done anymore. So
yeah. Command abilities changes. Well, the first one's a change, so this is an interesting one to me personally, because now you don't make the run roll anymore.
Yeah,
you have to spend it first, and I like that. I've never liked the fact that sometimes you get lucky and then you don't have to spend the command points. I like just saying these are going 6. Yeah, also, as well, something I've never liked either was when you used to do this. It used to consider the roll to have been a 6, and you used to then be able to add things that got +1 to run or +3 to run. You used to consider the roll to be a 6, and now it's a 9. They don't stack.
Yeah.
So the run roll is not made. Instead, 6 inches is added to the move characteristics. So if you've got a run bonus, you don't get it on top as well.
Sure.
Which is actually bad because I play Age of Sigmar, but I think it's a good change. I think there was too many units that had over time, at times in the past, +3 to run rolls. And it was if I make that a 6, it's now a 9. It's it's probably a bit much, just one of them things where you're that's probably too much.
Yeah.
It's also bad for corn, so it just ruins my life, this, basically. But I like
Tackle's point again here, where about the 4-inch move unit. It is bad for them because I like it. It's good in that they're not retreating and sneaking past stuff, right? They're probably actually retreating now, but it is easy, just a little bit of rapping and you won't get that last guy out of combat, will you? So it is tough for them.
Other games with, I want to say, slightly more mature rules, even though these rules are more mature than last edition, just say things like, if you can't get out of combat, move as far as you can go, and stuff like that, which I do think is a thing that would be better. I don't like
Yeah,
I
but
don't
these
like
are just saying
rapping.
these are took a different stance, though, right? You just can't
Yeah,
get
it's
away.
saying you can't, yeah. But another thing that doesn't make any logical sense again for new players is like the idea of wrapping units or tri-pointing units in 40k and all that. It doesn't make any sense logically, right? It's like it's not a thing you need in a war game. But sure, I mean, I don't care that much.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's getting into for not on there, like, but
Yeah.
okay, redeploy.
This is new and interesting. Yeah,
Yeah, right. Like it.
you got to be within 9 of an enemy unit, but more than 3 from an enemy unit. So basically, if something's in charge range of you, like charge range in inverted commas.
Yeah, actual good chance
D6.
to make a charge range. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, move the 6 away.
And you get to move D6, so like a mega effect, right? But is the distance enough? Is the fact that it's random okay?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is very clearly tentative.
Yeah.
Like they've gone, oh, we're not sure whether this is going to be too good. Because you imagine imagine if it was 6 or even 3, you move to within 3 of an enemy unit, it moves 3 back, and now you've got to roll a 6 on your charge roll. And then you imagine you combo that with like the Khorne command ability off the Demon Prince, which halves charge rolls. All of a sudden, you do this and the Khorne command ability, and people can only charge you if they roll a 12. Yeah. It's like, so I think, although when I first read it, I was like, wow, that's weak. I think I actually like it because even just going 2, but you know, we've all rolled double 1s to charge, right? You do fail 3 rolls. Going 2 inches back from an enemy that might be charging you can be a big deal. And if you think about how this would interact with shooting armies, which we all love to hate, it would just be another thing that would just be really negative to play against if they were just running away when you got there. So I like this. I think it'll be very impactful. I think you will use it very often. Yeah. I think you can do funky stuff with it as well.
Yeah, getting closer, moving on to objectives. Like there's loads of sweet stuff you can do with it.
Yeah, like moving on to an objective, or maybe moving far enough. If you're already like on it and they're coming in to charge you, you can move far enough past it that they won't be able to get the objective. Yeah, so like when you've got that turn 1 with slower units and they can't quite get all the way up or whatever, there's loads you can do with this.
Or they've like done the whole like retreat and snuck onto objective, but now they're within 9 of one of your units that wasn't on the objective or couldn't quite get all its models on, or could only get 1 on. Now they're within 9, you know, because you're competing over this objective, you know, in the middle, you're both like fighting over it, and it's like, oh, I've only got 1 and they've moved 3 on. Okay, I'll roll now and I'll move 5 more on. Yeah. You know, so
or changing your formation.
Yeah,
you know, like because you know, although that we don't have lines anymore, and it's a Age of Sigmar is a skirmishy game, we do have formations that matter. And like if someone comes round to charge your unit in the end and tag your unit in the side, which is a common tactic as well, you can get D6 inches to redeploy in the direction in which they're going to charge you, and then you've got your pilot on top of that, so you can suddenly go from having like 8 models in combat to having 30 models in combat if you get a decent roll. So. You can
rearrange where you're screening as well, maybe, can't you? You know, if a unit's like, you know, they do the movement phase, right? They move the units into positions, and then it's like, oh, they got some deep strikers coming down at the end of this phase. Yeah, where are they looking to go now? What's he doing? Okay, actually, let's push these 6 that way, you know, and we'll screen that part of the board that I might not cover.
Yeah. Move your screen over to cover something, or move your unit behind the screen. Or, you know, they've shot one of your screens off, so you're shooting unit behind that screen, moves behind this screen.
Yeah.
There's so many uses for this. I think it's really fun.
Yeah, I was like thinking about where you leave, you know, like where units can move through 1-inch gaps. So you've got like some stuff strung out, and there's a 1-inch gap, and like some 25mm models move through the gap, you know, to be in front of them, you know, or something like that.
Yeah.
So
even if you've just cocked up and you've made a mistake and you realise you've left a hole you shouldn't have, you can correct it now. And you know, you might be down a CP, but at least you haven't lost the game because your Lariel gets killed by a flying stone on or whatever. You know, like there's those kind of things that it can guard against, which is really good. I like it a lot. I actually think when they talk about now, I forget what line they used. Infinity says it's always your turn. I forget what the new tagline is for this. When I was looking at the command abilities, like the +1 save and all that, I was like, still not really my turn, is it? I'm just getting +1 to my saves. This is the one that, for me, makes it feel most like you can play the game in the other person's turn.
Yeah.
Like you're actually getting to do stuff. I love it. I wish more of them had been a bit like this rather than just stat bonuses.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's great. It's really
cool.
good.
It's really cool. Movement. You got anything here? Coherency we talked
Movement.
already.
No.
Remaining five's nice.
Yeah. So the impact of this, I think, unless it gets FAQ to say otherwise, is similar to the impact that in 40k. So you are stationary now instead of making a move, which means if you deep strike, you don't get the benefit to being stationary when you deep strike now. So for Cities of Sigmar, I was really excited about playing in this edition. I'm playing Living City and deep striking loads of crossbowmen all over the place and shooting people with them. Doesn't work with this role now because I count as having moved. Therefore, I can't remain stationary.
Yeah.
And so I don't get me double shots and stuff. And I don't think that was ever a good thing. And I actually think, although they FAQ'd it to work like that, I don't think it was originally 2 editions and a few FAQs ago when they said that's how it works. I don't think it was intentional. So I think this is a good change. It's intuitive with the way other games work and so on. I find the whole thing in the wording in this section about tracing a path very weird.
Okay.
So they continually referred to, in order to move a model, first you must trace a path over the surface of the battlefield, showing the route the model will travel. Yeah. And it actually makes quite a bit of logical sense to do that because, establishing where you're going to go before you do it is something you do in your head anyway, and it actually makes sense. But like, I struggle to see how that can't just cause problems when you're like about, you're talking about tracing a path along something and you're arguing over, being able to trace it, or you can't trace a path through that there, all this kind of stuff. I don't really understand, like, it doesn't define what tracing is. Like, the whole thing is just...
Do you think it's about just showing your opponent what you're intending to do with them?
It's just clearing things up, isn't it? It's trying to say, when you're moving stuff, be clear about what it is that you're doing.
Yeah.
I just think less weird ways to word it than talking about tracing a path and making path a keyword as well. Whilst on the on hand, I can imagine it is good. You could say if the model's path in quotes passes over this, then it does a thing. But like, I don't. Does that mean you have to like? I guess in theory, you got to measure it before you move the model and then move the model. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. But I mean, on the other hand, logically, that is the way we move models, right? Like, you put your tape measure down, you bend it around your corners or whatever. You say, this is where I'm going to go. You stick the model at the end of it.
You still do it anyway, don't you?
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess so. It just feels weird. I don't know.
I thought that seems
Maybe it's just me. Yeah. Maybe it's just me reading it.
Well, it has an effect on the next bit, right? Like, here's some of my favourite subjects, right? Terrain, flying, moving over terrain. Come on, like, what's your understanding of this now, how you move across terrain and all
that? So, I mean, in what way? Do you mean in terms of what's changed? What's changed in the previous edition?
Yeah, so let's look at the big one, right? How can you stand on the side of a wall?
I mean, it doesn't say you can't still, right?
Yeah, that's right. It doesn't say you can't.
That's still the problem. Although the confusing bit is, again, we're talking about tracing a path. Your base has got to stay parallel to the surface of the battlefield.
Yeah.
Right. And the battlefield, like, this is one of the things about inconsistent keywords. Battlefield's like a keyword when they define it at the top of the book. And now they've got to battlefield and it's not a keyword. There should be a keyword there to make that clear. But yeah, so, there's nothing that says you can't, but your base has got to stay parallel to the surface of the battlefield. So why this is weird is because if you've got let's say you've got a terrain, well, I guess not.
I think it's a flat no. I think it's a flat no for me, right? Because for me, it's like, it's not a rule thing; it's a physical thing. Here's the terrain. Yeah. Here's my model. It's got to stay parallel. I can't put it there. Where does it go? It falls to the bottom.
The problem is what happens when you get like, so the Sigmarite Mausoleum, right? It's got stairs on every side. Official Games Workshop model. The stairs are like this.
It's awful. Yeah.
The surface of the battlefield is defined at the top of the rulebook, and presumably it should have been here as well, as the flat surface. And it says if you've got a hill or whatever, like molded into the table, that counts as battlefield as well. But if you've got a terrain piece like the Sigmarite Mausoleum, can I not put my model on it there?
Yeah,
is it not legal?
I guess so. I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. Like,
if I was sticking to my guns on that thing, I do think so.
But according to I don't know. I mean, I guess it depends how you read it. It says when you move the model, it follows the path along the surfaces of the terrain, but its base is assumed to remain parallel to the surface. So does that mean it cannot walk up the stairs, but at any given point, the model actually like hovers like this up the stairs? It needs clarifying already. Like, you know, it doesn't make really any sense. You could certainly argue, if you were a mind to, that means you can't move over any terrain whatsoever unless it's flat to the battlefield. You can argue that it means you can't finish on a wall, which I think we would all like to be the case, hopefully. But you could also argue that it means you can finish halfway up a wall. Your model just counts as hovering in midair, which I also think, in a lot of ways, thematically is fine. But then there's no rule for flying models hovering, so why would that be the case? Why would they only be able to hover when they're next to a wall?
Yeah, like, so look, I think you can't, unless you can get to the top and put your model parallel to the battlefield, you can't do it on terrain.
Yeah.
I think, like, if you're on a few bits of rubble or some stuff that's been put on a base of flavour, we should start to, you know, there's common sense to be used, but unfortunately, you know, that's not great. But I don't think you should be able to stand on walls. I also think if you're on top of a building and your move can't get you to the bottom, you can't make that move because you're finishing further away from your base of starting position than you were. You know, it talks about jumping down levels and stuff. So, you know, you can't deep strike to on top of something and ever get down, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like that.
Yeah. I mean, I know where you're going.
I've like really read and had to think of because it wrecks me head. But
I know where you're going and why. I just don't think that the rules say that. Or I don't think that the rules actually say anything. I think it's absolutely not clear what the intention of this is.
I don't think the rules cover it, but I think the gaming pieces cover it. Like, you can't do it.
I think it's fairly logical, but at the same time, you imagine like the Seraphon Temple. I actually was about to go and pick one up off my shelf. The Seraphon Temple, right? If I've got a model on top of the Seraphon Temple, you can't charge it. If I've got a model,
I don't think you can stand on garrisonable things anymore, can you? So I don't think you can ever go on it.
Yeah. All right. Well, just using the model as an example.
That was a bit of a divvy thing to say, but you know.
You know what I mean? Like anything that's like reasonably large, or for example, a Sigmarite Mausoleum, right, with a dragon just standing at one end of it, but with all the stairs next to it, you could never charge it because you're not allowed to finish on the stairs.
Yeah, so you'd never be in that range. The dragon would be safe on top.
Yeah, exactly, and that's clearly like I can't imagine that this means you're not allowed to finish on the steps of a Sigmarite Mausoleum. So I don't think that it means that if you can't finish parallel to the battlefield physically, you can't move. I don't think that's good.
See, for me, it's not a problem because I don't like where is that model on those steps.
Well, yeah, I know.
Where's he gone? Oh, he slid down. Yeah. Damn, you just knocked it a tiny bit. Oh, he slipped. They've all slipped down. I don't know where the models are. Who's in melee range? But I just want my models to be on the battlefield where they are.
I guess I would rather deal with the problem all wargamers have dealt with forever of saying, oh, that model's just there, but it won't stay still, than have dragons able to sit, big base models able to sit on things and be unchargeable.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we've had that in 40K, had that problem loads of times over the last few years where if you put models in ruins in a certain way, no one can charge them. And it's rubbish. It's just silly. I want to see models not able to finish halfway up sheer walls anymore. especially if they don't fly. Like, I agree with you. Whatever these rules need to be FAQ'd to make that happen, I hope the FAQ to make that happen. But I don't think that I've never had a genuine problem, even in a very competitive game, final game of Warhammer World against Tom, like last year. We were fighting over a Sigmarite mausoleum. It's just not a problem. Like, it'd be ideal if it wasn't, but I would rather that than the alternative for me. Anyway, that first paragraph certainly does not meet the stated goal of being unambiguous at all.
Yeah.
That to me is a clear case of, like, the rules writer knew what he meant when he wrote it. He explained it to the playtesters. Everyone understood what he meant, and they forgot to check whether other people could understand it without the rules writer explaining what it's meant to mean. It just doesn't. It's literally a meaningless paragraph. Yeah. But it'll get FAQ'd. I'm sure it'll get FAQ'd. It'll be all good. And hopefully it stops models finishing halfway up walls because it's dumb.
Rambo Squirrel throwing out the 2D terrain shout. It's hard.
It's
hard, the 2D terrain in it. I know. It's so perfect for playing, but oh my god, it's 2D. It's
my personal favourite is like 2D terrain with terrain on top of it. So you get the forest down, put the woods on top of it. Just it does everything you need it to do. I don't like 2D buildings though. I can't handle 2D buildings.
Yeah, where it's just like a picture of a roof with some like whatever it's called shading on the side. Yeah,
I can't handle that. But 2D broken rocks, 2D hills. You can imagine they're not very steep. I'm good with.
I know, man. The flying one is big as well, mate. You know, your flyers don't get that free movement out. You have to measure it diagonally down, right? That's the right word, isn't it?
Trace it through the air. I show it in the diagram.
Yeah, that's great, and that's another abuse thing that we're glad to see gone. Yeah. So hopefully they've acknowledged all this, and if they do feel the need to say something about it, then they'll say that you can't leave your models at walls, because the problem was in the FAQ for the core rules from whatever edition, that last one, it said, your guy can climb off up the wall and he can stay there. So hopefully this time they'd say, no, your guy can't stay up the wall.
It's like it's from its roots as a skirmish game, isn't it? When it was like they couldn't really decide whether it was a skirmish game or not when it first come out, and they were like, right, you can climb stuff, which just led to me going, Sam, Nagash is standing on that wall. Nagash is standing on that wall. I don't think my Nagash was ever actually flat on a table, ever. I mean, he was, but he was actually halfway up a wall all the time. And
you watch him back. I'd love to discuss it. Tell me what you think. I think you can't make it all the way to the top, you stay on the battlefield. You can't get all the way down, you stay on the top. That's me. Right, let's change the page. I can't talk about terrain forever. Yeah. And I think it is a problem here. I've done a lot more TO than you, and you get asked a lot. Can my guy do this? What's allowed? What's all right? You know, and I'm constantly like, oh, I don't like what you're doing there. You know, I think it is a problem. Like, but
I agree it's a problem. I just don't agree that the rules say one way or another if they're actually solving it. You know, like,
is it a game 5 table 1 problem? No, but for everyone else, I think it's a bit more of a problem. Like,
it's funny that though, isn't it? You know, people often say, "Oh, this isn't a problem unless you're being gamey." It's actually the other way around. Yeah. It's just mostly people who, like a lot of these problems like we've talked about before, people who just don't understand how the rules work and they just want to know.
Don't play as much as we do. So yeah. Right, gosh, we're in a big phase now, the shooting phase. This is everybody's favourite phase in Age of Sigmar. My favourite phase, Ian's favourite phase. Best part of the game, shooting.
Shooting, yeah.
They haven't units. Have they done anything?
No, nothing's changed.
Yeah,
no.
You still shoot.
Yeah. You still shoot some stuff. The only, nothing's changed. But then charge phase, shoot and get some buffs in the charge phase.
Because you get some nerfs because you can only reroll 1 charge now. So
yeah. And now you have to worry about coherency, where shooting just still does the same thing it did before. Yeah. So look, you charging's
the command abilities we're talking about now, aren't we? We've got nothing to say there, have we? Let's be honest.
Yeah, we got some keywords added to charge roll, charge move, attempt to charge. You can
We're gonna
re-roll a
talk about
charge.
Unleash Hell then.
I guess we are going to talk about Unleash Hell, yeah, because it's never been mentioned in any community articles at all.
Hasn't it?
No, this is brand new to everyone listening. They've never heard of it before. So yeah, when after an enemy unit finishes a charge move, if you are, more than 9 from the enemy unit that charged and more than 3 from all other enemy units, so not in combat, within 9 of the unit that charged, not in combat, you can be in combat with the unit that charged you. You get a free shot or -1 to it, which is a terrible addition to the game. Unless shooting is going to be nerfed in upcoming books, which I could see happening. I could see as new books come out, shooting units get changed to be not as good anymore because, we're at that point in the cycle now where everyone's had enough and hopefully they won't make it as good again. But for now, when you finally get to a shooting army, they get to shoot you again. Only once a turn, luckily not 3 times a turn as people were kind of worried about when they first read this.
Yeah.
-1 to it as well.
Yeah. Obviously, you can. So we'll talk about the tagging thing, with the counter plays to it, right? It's charge something else in first, something suitable for that, and you can.
But
you can stop this.
It's still a buff to shooting. It's a buff to shooting whatever way you look at it, though, right? Like having to charge something else in first in the first place.
Yeah.
-1 to it, obviously.
All right. And we do that top level decision. Why are we buffing shooting?
Yeah.
But it's a proper wargaming thing, though, this, isn't it? Like
it is.
You got your spearmen there at the front, some archers shoot them, like it feels like perfect.
It does feel okay. But so there's new command abilities in every phase, right? And the other problem with this one, again, in my opinion, is you only get to play with this command ability if you got shooting in your army. And not every army has access to shooting.
Yeah.
So it also feels a little bit bad, I think, that, you put it in the charge phase. There's a lot about shooting's very good. Melee armies struggle. Melee armies have been nerfed with coherency and all this kind of stuff going on. And the ability for enemy units to run away from them with command abilities and stuff now as well. And on top of that, the only new command ability in the charge phase doesn't help charging units. So I think there's a lot to feel bad about with this, other than the fact that it makes shooting better, is like, where is the other one that helps people that are doing the charging? Like reroll a charge.
Is that the monster thing, though?
Well, no, because that doesn't help units of Oryx, or it doesn't help units of, swordsmen or anything like that. So
it's not a big flying monster coming from the sky. Stop it. It's annoying because thematically it feels sweet, but
the disadvantage on it.
I think there's loads of shooting units that -1 to hit is pretty bad, right? But unfortunately, there's some that it doesn't do much to at all.
And the worst shooting unit in the game, the least good play experience unit in the game is Lumineth Archers, and it doesn't affect them basically. So it definitely could have been better. This, I think.
You see how many points they make them, innit?
It does do some interesting stuff. So all these units in the game that have like short range shooting attacks, particularly short range shooting attacks that don't roll to hit, like Terrorgeists and stuff like that, or zombie dragons don't really roll to hit properly. Does interesting stuff with them. So it's actually cool on a lot of units. It's just the current state of the game. It's not great, and maybe over time that will be less of an issue when some things that are a bit too good get redone.
Yeah,
maybe. It's unclear. Well, it's not unclear right now. Obviously, some units are going to get to shoot twice with this because there's some units that already have this ability, and sometimes you can use this and then get 2 shots with them, which is really interesting. It depends on what it triggers on, though, because obviously you can't trigger off the same thing twice anymore. Actually, does triggering only stop you triggering on a dice roll, or is triggering any 2 triggers that you can't stack? There's an interesting question I hadn't thought about before.
It's just dice rolls, isn't it? That's all it refers to, rolls of 6s or whatever.
Trigger
everyone loves to say like triggers and things, but it's not really a thing in this game, is it?
It's not magic,
yeah.
So trigger effects
but it doesn't mean anything.
triggered effects are specifically applied when a dice roll triggers them. So an unmodified 6 or whatever. So yeah, you can shoot twice with a unit of handgunners or whatever, which is good.
No, it's good. I'm always on the I'll see side of things. Doesn't seem that much of a problem. Yeah, I don't know. I think we could be okay with this. Let's see. I won't regret that.
I think you will get a lot of people playing against Lumineth, KO particularly because they're so hard to actually catch, and the entire game against KO is, do you catch them with enough stuff left intact to kill them, or do you not? And now when you catch them, they get another shot. And sometimes that one shot is the one that breaks you back, right? And it can be with
Thunderers get +1 shot within 3 inches as well. Like,
yeah, and obviously you got like the Helen +1 shot ability as well. Like clearly made to go with this ability, but if they only shot within 3 inches and didn't shoot also at 30,000 inches, that would be fine. But that's not the case.
In those situations, you can't get to them, right? You can't get to the archers. You're just like, I'm charging these spearmen, and I can't get to the archers, and I'm getting shot by them, and that's that. Like, obviously,
it's that and redeploy for me is going to, I think, will be actually quite negative to play against as a melee army, because all you want to do is just get there. Not only do they, and often when you're a melee army against a shoot army, you're not getting to within 3 and charging 3. You're getting to within 7. And you're doing a charge and you're hoping you get there. And now they get to move D6 away. So maybe you're trying to charge 10. And even if you do make it, they're getting a free shot. So I think there's a lot stacking up for shooting in here. And shooting is going to be even better in this edition than it was in the previous edition.
Yeah, you've done all that work to get the screen out the way, do whatever. And then they've also got redeploy. They've also got stand and shoot. Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah, and you've not now got to account for coherency, and your units are probably smaller, so you can't pump everything into just getting one unit there and doing the job. Now you've got to do more. So I think, undoubtedly shooting is actually getting better this edition, which is not great.
Fair enough.
What are we on to next?
Now?
Yeah, combat phase. Some big changes in this one.
Yeah, there is. Go on. What do you like?
So first of all, I like the fight first and strike last thing.
Okay.
Biggest change for me is if you've both got fight first effect, you alternate the fight and first stuff now.
Yeah.
You don't
That's cool.
Much better. How it always should have been. If you both got it, one person shouldn't have it completely invalidated because someone won the turn roll. And I like that a lot. Also, within these rules, completely clarifies using abilities and then striking first. So one of the problems always used to be strike first units would go before you got to use your defensive abilities and stuff. Particularly relevant now that we've got +1 save, command ability and stuff like that as well. And now it's obviously changed so that you use all your abilities first, and then all the striking first stuff goes.
Yeah.
So I like that. A little bit of clarification on fight or pass, although you're not allowed to. It just cleans up how that phase actually flows. Like in a lot of games, you keep going until both people pass, then it ends. You can't pass if you've got a unit in melee range. Nice and tidy. Sure, that will be relevant in the future as well. Which is good. Just generally
cool.
Really good.
Pylon's quite a bit different as well.
Pylon, massive change.
Yeah, huge difference, isn't it? So you can move a model making a pylon move up to 3. When you make a pylon move with a model, it must finish the move no further from the nearest enemy unit than it was from the starting move. So we're not model to model, we're model to unit. So it doesn't allow these models to move around now.
Yeah, it allows them to move around, which will allow you to do some funky stuff, certainly. But it was very fiddly on a high end tables in Age of Sigmar, piling stuff in units, and there was always lots of arguments, but discussions. Oh, you've moved that model in the wrong direction. He was closer to that guy.
Yeah.
Sometimes it was too late to really go back and manage a very tiny measure something that was so tiny. I think we've all probably done it and had our opponents say, that doesn't look like you went in the right direction, and you say, I have, and stuff. for example, but you've already moved the model and you're talking about tenths of an inch, so it's too late. I think it just makes the game easier. I think whatever negative things there are, because you can do slightly funky stuff with your pile-ins, I think it just makes the game easier and simpler. And no one, again, outside of competitive level, no one played those rules tightly anyway. So might as well just get rid of them.
Yeah, I like it. I think it's cool. Like, you I'm saying, man, you can't half. Like, there's always that, like, trying to get, you're trying to get on an objective with a unit when you're piling, and you're trying to move more models onto the objective, and now you can actually move them quite far. You can be really close to a nearby model. When you say you can be, an inch away from a nearby model, and you can move, to a model that's much further away. You're a lot further away from where you started, but you're within half an inch of the next thing. So, and
it's a really big buff to units that get to pile in more than 3. There's lots of abilities in the game. I mean, zombies and all the wind elves and all that kind of stuff. But also, where I like this is there's quite a lot of abilities in the game where you can still only pile in if you're within 3, but you can go 3 further. And, you can move 6, but only if you were within 3 to start with. Yeah. And those abilities traditionally just didn't really do anything. Like, you very often couldn't use that extra 3 inches. And now they do something because you can actually go further. Yeah. So, I like this change. I think it just tidies things up and makes things simpler and less complicated.
No, fair enough. Okay, anything else? I think we got all that, haven't we?
No, I don't think there's anything else in that bit for me.
Yeah, it's good.
Great changes. Great changes.
Yeah, really, really cool. This is all. I don't remember looking at this and thinking there was anything for me. This is what's all about attacking now.
Yeah, attacking. I don't think So there is one change actually in attacking. I'll tell you. So firstly, you can split attacks on a weapon now, which you didn't used to be able to do.
Oh, you could.
Right, splitting attacks from a single weapon.
Yeah, you could. Yeah.
Could you? I don't think you could.
I always played you could, like against others. I'm pretty sure you could.
The
shooting thing gets cleared up a little bit as well. Like, the range must be measured from the closest visible model in the unit. To the closest visible and stuff, isn't it? So.
Yeah.
That would come up a bit, and it didn't really cover that. Where you'd you can see a model at the end, but does a model like really close behind the wall, and could you measure?
Oh yeah, you could. Yeah, you measure that one. Yeah, that's true.
Stops that a little bit. Like, okay, I can only see that guy all the way over the hill. Now.
Yeah.
That was the one. I think that's probably the only thing that stood out to me. Yeah.
So there's another thing here as well. Is that so previous to last General's Handbook? I forget what order they went in. Attacks used to be done on an individual model by model basis, right?
Yeah.
And we just grouped dice together because we were allowed to. Then in last edition, you had to group dice together. Like, you had to roll all the dice at the same time. We've gone back to now individual dice rolls again. So you got the combined attack section. It says you can. So you've got the option again of combining attacks from the same unit. So where it's advantageous not to roll your dice in a combined manner, you can actually roll them all separately. So when you get to doing things like things that are going to bounce mortals back at you on a 6 or whatever, you can roll them. You can roll them one at a time. You can figure out what they're going to do and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was always very edge case when that made any difference. But there are times when it has made a difference in the past, and it's changed twice now.
Mm-hmm.
So it's mostly irrelevant, but it is a change.
Yeah. All right. Well, the next part is one of the other massive changes. This is all about the stacking, right?
The attack sequence. Yeah.
Is this where we're going to cover? You can only add +1 and
stacking modifiers. Yeah.
So
I do think I do think this probably could have been a little bit on the clearer side.
Yeah, I do as well. I did think at first, can you actually add 2 to a roll, or you're only ever allowed to add 1?
Yeah, in which case a +1
the same.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like if I had +2 and the other person had -1, have I got 0 because I couldn't go to me +2 in the first
Yeah,
place, or have I still got +1? Yeah,
yeah,
and there is
exactly.
I saw a photo that someone posted somewhere online
Right.
of a sidebar that clarifies that in like a potato can photo, but I haven't found it. I can't find it in the book anywhere.
That
Right?
was a time where I looked and thought, oh, where's my designer notes here? You know, to say an
Yeah, exactly.
example. You know, I was like,
Exactly.
oh, here's
Yeah.
an example. Your guys had +2 to hit because of X and Y, but the goblins had a net, so you're only +1. You know,
Yeah.
um,
It should be. I mean, the rules like that clearly. You read this, and your first question is, "Do I add them all up and take the net result?" And it can't be more than. I mean, in
yeah.
the 40k rulebook, it's clear about this.
Is it?
This
Yeah,
isn't.
yeah.
Yeah, the 40k rulebook's really clear, but this one isn't. So they've missed a little bit there. That probably should have been in there, but
I think it does say it, doesn't it? I just think maybe a tiny bit of commentary and we'd be okay, right?
yeah, I mean it sort of does say it, but it's a very obvious question because we literally all read it and went, okay, what does this exactly mean? So it only says it if you read it one way. But yeah, it was weird because I saw a potato can photo on Twitter. Someone was like, "Look, here's the answer," and I was like,
well, if it's in here, then it's in here, isn't it? So it's good.
So anyway, you know, it seems that you can only go to plus or -1. You add all your modifiers up, and the net can't be more than plus or -1, which is a good thing. Again, hits some armies quite hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Hits some units quite hard.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of units who are great swords are a good example for me. Right, they've got a built-in. They got a built-in +1 to hit, right? And you know, it's now no, sorry, not great swords. They're a terrible example because they've got a 2 up. Anyway, Manfred, there's an example, right? Manfred gives everything +1 to hit and wound, but there's a bunch of other stuff that already gives stuff +1 to hit, right? So you can't stack them up.
Yeah, like
and it's
you know, obviously we talk about. Oh, you're looking at it from that side. See, I look straight to the negative side. I was always thought that negatives to hit had already got worse because they were adding more pluses or units were hitting better to stop the reroll stuff. So I already thought negatives were going into a bad spot, and now they've got into like even an only spot now because you know we were already out there. There's all out attack here, you know, as well, which is a +1 to hit. You know, command ability they can do. So I did think like it is really getting worse for them. I guess
I like that though. I don't think there's ever been a time when every time that there's been armies around that are making use of a lot of stacked up negatives to hit. In both games, 40k had this problem with Eldar as well. It's not a great play experience.
It's not.
Like, look, you can't kill my stuff.
No, it's not.
Much
It's
better.
not in fairness at all. It's not. I agree. Yeah, but you know, it's what some armies did play to that strength, didn't they? Now, what do you think about armor? You think Ren's got a lot worse?
Yeah, I think
Mortal's better.
So
Ren worse. Armor really good.
I've always said I don't think Ren should be considered a modifier. Like I find it weird that it still counts as a modifier, and it does in the technical sense, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's just a different thing. It's not like a save. I'm getting a bonus or a negative to me save. It's just part of the attack sequence. But now, obviously, you can stack up the save rolls because, by the way we're reading it now, at least, unless it gets FAQ'd, Ren's just a modifier. So if I stack multiple +1s, I can go to a 0+ save effectively, and then Ren will just bring it back down.
Yeah.
No, I still think Ren's mega important because there's loads of units in the game now that can get to a 2+ or a 3+ save. And you need the difference in 1 point to Ren against a 2+ save guy is massive. So I think if anything, Ren's got better because as saves get better, the value of Ren goes up. You know, where for example, if I'm playing zombies and people are paying points for units with Ren, I'm like, ha ha ha, brilliant. You know, so in my best evil necromancer voice.
Yeah, I think it's I don't know. I feel like they've introduced more ways for more units to negate Rend. Mystic Shield, all out defense. You know, these things weren't there before. It was very rare. +1 save was pretty rare.
Yeah, it was quite rare. Yeah.
And now it's
no. Mathematically, Ren gets the better a save roll is, the more value Rend has. So Rend's, in my opinion, Rend's just got better. Because there are more better saves in. Like even a unit that's got a 4-up going to a 3-up is big. And the value of 1 point of Rend against a 3-up compared to a 4-up is better. The more save you have, the better Rend gets. So I think, in actual fact, I think what you'll find is that units with 0 Rend are actually going to go down in stock, because now every army is going to have access. I mean, even a 3-up save's amazing against 0 Rend. And a lot of armies that have got a high volume of no Rend attacks, like Witch Elves, for example, if they haven't got Mind Razor down, are really going to struggle against, like, Stormcast with a 2-up. They're just going to sit there and just save everything.
I think, though, even with all your Rend, I can cancel it now, whereas I couldn't really cancel it, and you'd rip through units.
But you can't cancel.
I know what you're saying as well, like, but I'm talking like. Yeah. You can, right? Like, let's say you're in cover and, you use 1 or 2 of these abilities and you had a good save already, right?
Yeah.
You know what it is when you're going in, you're like, right, Rend 2, these are only saved on 6s, that's sweet. Hopefully it doesn't spike some saves. I've got this unit dead. Now you're going into combats and like, they've got a 3 or a 4+ save and anything could happen.
Yeah. No, I get what you mean. I guess from the point of view of like surety and a guaranteed outcome, and that it does change. But
I feel stupid though. What you're saying is completely right as well. But
you're
talking
right,
mathematically X, Y, Z. I'm like, right, I'm in the game here, and I know now that this big beastie has got no threats because I can do X, Y, Z on it, even against that over there that's got Rend 2. Which would have been the thing that would have got me, or something like that.
If you can get saves very low, if you've got like Kragnos, right, and you can get Kragnos to a 0+, and you've got Rend 2, then obviously your Rend is now just flat bad. But I think the reality of it is most units aren't that high. Most units will be going from a 4+ to a 3+ or something, where Rend is just getting better. But when units, unless units are going to a 1+, Rend's actually just better, and you'd be in a significantly worse situation if you'd chosen 0 Rend units. And like I look at, like, as bad as skeletons were before, they're definitely dead now. As bad as ogre man-eaters were before, they're definitely dead now. Because it's just too easy for your average 4+ save unit to go, I'm going to use all-out defense. It's too easy to get access to that +1 save. Speaking of +1 saves, did we skip cover in the terrain section, or is cover further down?
I think it comes on, because some of the stuff I was talking about movement, there's a bit more of that later on when we get into the terrain section as well. So
we'll get to that in a minute. Yeah. So that's interesting as well. But yeah, I mean, overall, to me, Ren's just gone up in stock pretty much, particularly Rend 1. Because Rend 1's quite cheap and makes a big difference to those mid-save units.
All right,
overall, though, good changes, these.
It is.
Also, I think an important thing in here is something that's always confused people is how mortal wounds work. I don't know how much time I spend answering the questions of how mortal wounds work and when something is a mortal wound versus when it is damage, and what that means at each point in the combat sequence. And it's easy now. It's clarified. Every successful attack inflicts damage. Like, it is obvious what that means. And when you get to the mortal wounds section, although I'm skipping ahead a little bit here, it says what they do, when they're inflicted, what they're treated as, which I think is really good.
Yeah, that's cool. We best talk about the 2 command abilities then.
Yeah. Again, completely brand new. No one will have heard any
brand new, massive, big impact ones as well. Okay, so I guess you love the first one. Shooting or fight phase, +1 to hit.
Yeah. So if you're a melee army,
shooting, I was like, whoa, like,
crazy.
When you're a melee army, that never existed.
Yeah. When you're a melee army, you get a bunch of bonuses that you can only use in melee, right? But then you get a bunch of abilities that can be used for shooting or melee. And again, it's just this thing. It's like, why are there a bunch of defensive abilities with shields I can only use in melee? But then when melee don't get a thing that only they get access to, it's just like shoot and get it as well. So they get all the benefits and none of the drawbacks. So this is good. Doesn't stack with loads and loads of things. loads of units in the game can already get +1 to hit, so this does nothing for them. But you can only use it once a turn. There's a good chance that you're going to have something to use it on, even if you are an army that's already got pluses to hit. So yeah, it's a big deal. I don't think it should have been available to shooting units. I think that's just a straight up mistake. I think that we should have, with a singular purpose, these warriors attack with all their might. They pull their bowstrings back a bit harder. It makes no sense. No sense whatsoever. There's no such thing as a berserk bow attack, right? And from a balance point of view, balance and shooting against melee should have some of these bonuses, and shooting should have access to them. As it is, again, massive buff for shooting. Shooting doesn't get that many buffs. Unfortunately, I can't stack Cities of Sigmar.
Yeah, I'd be concerned about that, because it's not like the -1 to hit. It's like the lookout sir, right?
Yeah.
It's like it's gone. You rely on that, don't you? And it's there you go. It's gone. I still hit you really well. So, but
like Rogers just said, you just pull your trigger extra hard. Like the guy with the gun's just like really trying to make sure his crossbow flies as straight as possible.
I don't know. I think you can try to shoot better as much as you can try to fight better. I'll be honest. So,
but the description is with all their might.
Yeah.
You don't mightily pull back a crossbow trigger. Anyway, silly. I know it's silly.
You can pull a bow back. You can pull a bowstring back a bit stronger. Hey, come on.
I think again, but most of the models in this game, when they have bows, they're magic anyway, and they shoot themselves around corners.
In the comments, please leave in the comments references to shooting harder. I'd like links to videos, clips, GIFs, and any scientific evidence of people shooting harder.
I do. So one of the things that was disappointing about the changes in this is that they haven't made the ability to shoot heroes any worse. I sort of had a little bit of a hope that they'd go with some sort of 40k-ish rules, so you couldn't just snipe heroes off. It's the worst thing in this game is being able to just 5-wound heroes, being able to be taken off like this. And
I just see, I don't know if I'm just too used to it, but when I play 40k, it's like, okay, all my guys are safe. Oh yeah, where's the play in that? Do you know what I mean?
Maybe.
At times, it's like, okay, these guys do all these amazing things. Look at this buff, this buff, this buff, this buff, and they just stand there and do it all game. I don't know.
I'd be okay with that if every army had access to the ability to take those things off the board. I would be okay with it, but they don't. Most armies don't.
Yeah.
And then giving +1 to hit to the ones that already can is, like you say, that's very. It's not going to be great to play against knowing you're just straight up losing those heroes. There are some mitigations to this in a minute.
Yeah.
I guess in a lot of ways, but I do think it's non-ideal and will contribute to what are more shoot and feel bads so far, I think. And then all out defense as well, though, +1 to save.
Yeah, there you go. And that works in both phases, which is nice again, because again, a lot of these times we see this defensive ability doesn't work against shooting, don't we? They only work in the fight phase and stuff like that. So, that's good. Again, I don't know. I don't know if someone without a shield defends themselves better against a bow. Do they just try harder not to die when the arrow hits them, or are they dodging?
Well, actually, in the description of this one, it says with consummate skill, these cunning warriors protect themselves from attack. So this one does work thematically.
Why?
They could dodge, dip, dive, and dodge.
Dip, dive, dodge.
Yeah, they could hide behind their friends. They're cunning. They can
friends so someone else dies.
Yeah,
that's in the removing models party, and you pick which of your models got hit by the arrows. You get to do that anyway.
Yeah.
Reference Matrix scene 2.13. That's I like that one as well. That's good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I can't. Ian, I can't wait to play on Saturday. I'm honest, mate. Honestly. I can't wait to start
excited.
Some of the stuff used.
Yeah, I don't like all the changes, but I'm excited for all the stuff. There is a lot of change. The net effect of all this is great. It's going to be brilliant. Some changes I don't like, but that's normal.
Yeah.
We just skip over the wound section quickly. Ward is a keyword now. You get a ward roll.
Yeah, we only have to mention slaying models. They've stopped stringing, so it's like if models come back, they come back within an inch of a model that was on the board. So,
yeah, not within X of a model that has just been returned as well. Yeah, that's an important thing to mention actually. Funny that was already in the Soulblight Gravelord's book as well.
I expect to see that one carry on. It was nothing new really. Like you say, was already in there. So the Battle Shock phase.
Yeah,
I think
there's no changes here.
Sorry,
there's no changes here, right?
I think they. I've got a couple of pages behind. Sorry, because I'm looking at my physical book here. No, they've took away the bonus bravery, right, for your unit size.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah. They have. Yeah, that's a change. I forgot to write that down actually.
Yeah. So that's gone, and
the big thing is Inspiring Presence is
only once a phase, right?
Yeah. And that's a command ability change, but that's important. What I like that change. I've always hated Inspiring Presence. I think it took away a big part of the game. But like, there's quite a few armies that get like command abilities that make everything immune to Battle Shock with an X, and the stock of that's just gone way up now because it actually matters.
Yeah.
Which I like.
I like now. We'll shoot 5 units and cause lots of Battle Shock tests or something, right?
Yeah.
No, I think anything to bring Battle Shock into the game a touch more is nice. I quite like it. I've been playing with and against Lumineth a lot, and they push the Battle Shock thing quite a bit. And although some of it seems a bit bent at times, it was nice seeing that part of the game back in it. So
yeah. And I do think it pushes up. It pushes up the stock of bravery debuffs as well.
Yeah.
Right. Is like, if you're negatively affecting someone's bravery because this is worse now, because you're not getting that bravery modifier on bigger units, and units are going to be smaller as well anyway, and you're only using Inspiring Presence once a turn, there's more chance of all those bravery things actually doing something now. So I think that's a good thing as well.
Yeah, so we've moved through most of the main part of a game of Warhammer here, right? Our moving, our shooting, our fighting, our guys running away. So let us know what you think so far. If you're watching this back, leave a comment, let us know. We really appreciate it. And if you're excited about this as much as I are, don't forget you can pre-order all this from us on Saturday, 19th of June at 10 a.m. The Minion, the core rulebook, General's Handbook, all of this is going to be available from us, and we really appreciate your support if you choose to shop with us. So, terrain.
I like these changes.
Right, this is basically behind, right?
Yeah. So there's 2 changes, right? So the first one is behind as a new thing.
Yeah.
So as long as you're within 1 inch of a terrain feature, and you're more than 3 inches away from the enemy, and all the lines of sight cross over the terrain, you count as being behind the terrain.
Yeah.
Which means you get cover, so you no longer have to sit in terrain. Terrain has got an effectively bigger area now, basically, right? And you can just go behind it. I do think that it's still a little bit close because all of your models have to be within 1 inch, so you're almost still on it. But 1 inch, if you add 1 inch border to a wood or something, it actually adds quite a lot of extra space. So I think it's good. I can also see this maybe being used in terrain rules in the future. If they add more terrain rules, maybe in the new GHBs or whatever.
It's actually an old rule, right? Like the obstacle rule, which existed for a long time. We basically generally never use the terrain rules of 40k. Like nobody does, and I think probably rightly so, because it was only on like war scrolls for terrain pieces that they made. But at times when I'd struggle for terrain at events when we start out and stuff, I'd have walls on the board, and in the briefing at the start of the day, I'd be stressing what a wall does and how it works to people to make sure they knew it had quite a big effect on the game.
I played a lot of 1,000-point 40k last year when the edition first came out, and we used a lot of walls. I think they were great.
Yeah.
I also like that they've created this new thing about scattered terrain in the sidebar as well. Again, not sure why it's in a sidebar. That would imply it's not a real rule, but it's not a commentary. And basically, any piece that is too small to have an effect on the battle or is otherwise inconsequential, so we're going to name them. Could probably be a little bit clearer in that, but we're going to name them. It's purely decorative, and you can ignore it. Yeah. It's a nice clarification, that, because you want to be able to, like, scatter terrain on boards makes a huge difference, right? And when it's unclear what that does, like, can I move through this like single rock or not, or whatever? It's just nice to have that on, because it just gives you a little bit of opportunity for something you can do.
As a bat rep channel and watching other bat rep channels, like, there's a lot of that stuff getting scattered around, to make the tables look awesome, and they do. Yeah. I need more of that to throw around, so that's cool. Yeah. What was your second change you had here?
The second change was woods blocking line of sight.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I'm interested to see how this works out, because we skipped ahead a little bit in this, but it says forests and woods in games of Age of Sigmar are called wildwoods, right? And in one way, it sort of implies that this only matters if you're actually using an official wildwood model, but really it actually says forests and woods. So for me, what this means, maybe you think different if you weren't thinking this, but I think what this is saying now is every forest and wood piece on the board now is a wildwood.
Yeah, correct.
Officially.
Yeah.
And therefore all forests in the game now block line of sight.
Yeah.
Which means that we've got line of sight blocking terrain.
Yeah.
More common, easier to use for event organizers as well, not having to worry about making massive rocks. And just generally on most boards, everyone's got forests. They look great on a board. It just gives you another thing that you can use against shooting, which is not much in the face of all the stuff shooting has gotten in here, but it's something.
Yeah, and maybe that's down to us as TOs to make sure it's something,
Yeah.
We need to get more woods out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or we need
if it's a forest,
keyword or terrain pieces as whatever we need to say, lost blockers.
Yeah, every TO should be considering all their forests as wildwoods now. If that's not how you read that rule, that is how I read it, is that they are anyway.
Oh, yeah.
But even if it's not how you read the rule, you should be using that.
How can you read that any other way?
Some people will say, well, wildwood is a official terrain piece, right?
It's an awakened wildwood.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, you can tell you play that army. I don't. Yeah. But anyway.
I love the large and very large terrain, right? So there's two other ones. They're quite cool. Like they have put some stuff in here. So the defensible terrain as well, right? Like full complete buildings. You can't go on it. There's no climbing up walls of complete buildings. So it does rule those out at least. You can't go on them. And they've pushed getting garrison used again. Don't see that tournaments much. Don't see people often use full buildings. It's a rule that's always been around. Garrison, but there's so few events have complete buildings, really.
I know something about garrisons that I can't talk about.
Do you?
I'll tell you that.
You never told me that.
Secret backdoor knowledge.
Look, large and very large terrain. I was like, oh, okay, what's this? A terrain feature that is more than 12 inches up to 19 inches across, and his wide point is large. And I was like, my God, how big? Are these terrain?
They are castles when people drag them out. At least they've accounted for it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to tell you what my thing is that I know about garrisons, so it doesn't sound like something dodgy is going on, because I'm aware it may have come across like that.
Okay. It did.
I know that the terrain, the terrain at Warhammer World is going to be like accounting for all these new terrain rules.
Yeah, well, you don't so, right? That's cool.
You hope so, but we are, all these kind of like defensible terrain features. Clearly, I think, whereas we've always shied away from garrisons in the past, even when Warhammer World has allowed them. When I was TOing for the one heat that I TO'd at Warhammer World, someone came and asked me if they could garrison a building, because he wanted to do something super gamey. Not a super gamey player, wanted to do something super gamey, sticking his units in a garrison. He said, "Can we use garrisons?" And my answer was like, no one uses garrisons. Obvious answer. But obviously now I think that they're going to become part of the game now, which is great, and we're going to see them at tournaments, and that means I think we'll be using this more, which I do think is cool. There's some rules in here around where objectives and stuff go on garrisons later as well. on
and
impossible terrain.
And some buildings in them as well. I was just gonna quickly scan this. Yeah, they've changed a little bit as well. Yeah, stuff that can't go in, size of things that can go in. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's good that we're going to see them. It's a change that we're going to see them. I don't know how good it's going to be, but yeah, we'll see.
Objectives then.
Well, can we just talk about, actually, I also didn't write down my comments on garrisons here, but there's a comment about demolishing garrisons as well.
Yeah, sure.
So there's rules for demolition stuff now. When you demolish a garrison, every model in it, you roll a dice on a 1, it dies, but then you set them up within 6, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the number of demolition rules in the game, do you think, with the number of units that can demolish things now, what do you think about sticking your units in a garrison, demolishing it with your own guy to get a free 6-inch move? It's quite cool, isn't it?
Okay. Yeah.
It's a little slingshot,
I
dodgy
like
slingshot.
Yeah, clever tactic.
Yeah. Yeah, you could,
that's fine. That's clever.
Mercenary Gargants, if they still work. You've got your Lumineth, you've got your Despoilers, Chaos. You got loads of things that demolish
Monsters
stuff now, right?
Can just do it, can't they? Isn't like a where are these monster rules?
Oh yeah. Did we miss monsters, or are they just really far down in the list? They are.
Not talking about that?
Yeah, they're really. They're in section 21.1, Richard.
Oh, good old 21.1.
Yeah, 21.1.
That's a clever trick. I've not heard that one before, Ian. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was reading it, I was like, 6. That's a big number.
Oh, like normally it's like terrain piece you get in as well. It's like
exactly, yeah.
Huge.
Normally it's within 3. So if you think about some of those massive like ruins and stuff that we would probably class as garrisonable, if they're arranged so like that in your deployment zone and a bunch of it out of your deployment zone, you could get a massive
huge jump out of it. Yeah, clever, good one, sneaky. I like that.
Interesting.
So,
Objectives.
So there's some changes here that we hope we'd see more of, right? Like
which ones?
So I'm going to talk about this in general, right? I don't care the order we go through. So how many models count?
Yeah. Yeah,
I always hated the Stonehorn thing and all that because it was just so out of place. Only one you had. It was like annoying. Would that be a rule that could be in the core rules in the future? Something that could happen to every unit, and they've done that. And monsters counts as 5 models, and then anyone with a wounds characteristic of 5 or more that's not a monster counts as 2 models.
Yeah.
Cool.
So
what happens
I like
to cavalry?
This
Cavalry 3 falling, guys?
Yeah. I like this change, but it's just lame. Like, it's just a lame implementation of what it could have been, right? Like, what we wanted to see, it is safe again, yeah, but it didn't need to be that safe. Like, let models count as the number of wounds they are, or something, at least. Or at least let things with more than 1 wound count as 2 models. Like, there's barely any models in the game with 5 wounds, and the ones that do have the sort of 5 to 8 wound bracket that are not a monster, there's not many of them at all. The ones that are in that wound bracket, counting them as 2 models barely makes any difference. If you imagine 3 Storm Fiends, which are a 200 and odd point unit, or 3 Juggernauts, which are nearly 200 points, counting as 6 instead of 3 models barely moves the needle on when you're trying to take an objective. What this needed to say was, either you count as the number of wounds you are, which I think has always been my preference, and the way the community played it before we had the General's Handbook as well, or at least anything with more than 1 wound, because the most common wound number in the game is 1, right? And everything else is bigger than 1. So just anything with more than 1 wound counts as 2 would have also been sort of fine. This is like disappointing compared to what it could have been, I think, in terms of fixing so many of them units that just need to count as more models. Blood Knights, the 200 point unit with 5 men in. Would it really be negative if they counted as 10? or even 15 if you actually use their wounds. No, not really. 200 points. You know.
Do you think they worry about how much it takes away from the armies that they've identified and needed help in this way? I don't know.
I mean,
if that it does lose the identity of those ones a lot, but again, I don't think that's bad, right?
I don't think models being a casualty of your new edition is a good reason not to make good changes, right? Like the new command point stuff's all cool. If it doesn't work on OBR, you know, sometimes there's a loser in an edition change, right? And if this messed up with what Stonearms did, but it wouldn't even do that, because if we're saying that cavalry count as 2 and things with 5 wounds count as 5, all of them count as 5 or whatever, your Stonearms are still counting as 10 and your Giants are still counting as 30. You know, like they're still better than these numbers. There's just so many of the worst units in the game that would change overnight if they just changed this. And I really thought this was going to be in this edition. I really thought we were going to see a change. And it's disappointing that the change is so weak. It is still good, though, in a lot of ways. You know, make a monster count as 5.
It is good. I do like the nod to it. I like the monster. The monster one is...
The monster bit's all right. But I think it should have been more. Again, against most of the time, if a monster counts as 5, it's either taking the objective by killing a 30 model unit or it's not, right? The thing it does stop that I like, most of the time, right? There's very rarely a point where you're getting something to under 5 but not dead with a monster where it matters. It does stop the stupid thing of, my wizard who's been sitting at the back all game goes and contests your dragon holding my objective. Like, you know, that's good. That's a positive thing.
You killed a monster, there's 10 guys and there's 2 left and he doesn't take it off them, you know, and he actually does still.
It's better than nothing.
I just think it could have been a little bit more for a lot of stuff. I would have liked to have seen the 2 to 4 wound unit maybe be on 2 models.
Mostly the 2 wound bracket, you know, it's all your 2 wound models that have effectively got exactly the same characteristics of a unit of 10 models, except they only count as 5. Yeah. It's your Chaos Warriors. I mean, Fire Slaves don't need the help, but it's your Chaos Warriors. It's all your 2 wound cavalry in the game, which are all mostly fairly pointed for what they do, unless they're out the Luminet book, and could be decent if they just counted as 1 more model. And this, you know, without no stat changes, all those models could have suddenly been in contention for going in your armies. And now you're still like, you know.
What about, let's say, like an overall change to the size of units? That there was more of an MSU push. Is it less an issue for these smaller units now if there's not as many big blobs walking around?
Well,
I don't feel like it's going to change that much myself. But
no, you're still going to have the same problem, aren't you? You know, you're still going to have the problems where, you know, 10 cavalry fight 5 cavalry fight against 10 guys, 1 cavalry dies, 5 men die, the men still hold it, even though the cavalry have clearly won the fight. It doesn't really make any sense.
Is 5 models with no coherency issues counting as 10 too good versus a unit of 10 that has to deal with coherency issues?
I imagine the playtester's answer is yes, or maybe the net result of playtesting this was that maybe they felt it was too good. You know, maybe if we played it, we would think that cavalry counting as 2 pushed cavalry too far the other way and made them too good. Although personally, I'd be okay with that. You know, like a change would be nice. Cavalry being good instead of generally being on the weak side would be okay.
Might not even tested it. It's like it's such a not obvious, but like something you think would come up, you know, or might have come up before now and hasn't. Like, so maybe it's
on the flip side, given cavalry have been significantly nerfed by coherency, you're not going to take them in units of more than 5, so that this couldn't actually ever be that broken, really. And if you were going to take them in 10s, the back 5. Or the ones that couldn't get into combat, depending on how you organize your unit, would only be holding things, not actually fighting. So this would actually help them still. So this could have been well better. It's disappointing not to see this do more. For definite, could have been a lot better. But still,
bit safe again.
bit safe, better than no change.
Yeah,
the
definitely.
monster.
And we already highlighted some examples that have feel bads and silly things in the game that this does help with a lot. So it's doing some good work.
Mostly in the monster arena. Yeah, for sure.
What about contesting objectives then? Can a unit contest too with different models or not? Have you seen this?
Yeah, you can't. They've gone back to the old way of doing it now, so a unit can't hold 2 anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Again, they're pushing stock and string, and it fits with everything they've done. So even if there's a little bit, I think that's what it says.
Yeah. They probably didn't need to do it now that they've stopped string them really as much. But there are like anything on a 25mm base can still string as much as it wants, right? So this is a good change.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Wizards. I'm sorry, I'm turning the one book and not turning the other one again.
Wizards. So this is like a little bit into where we get into the sort of like keyword soup thing again now, where it's like you can see what they've tried to do, but it hasn't really worked, and they've put like the wizard can cast a spell they know, which is highlighted, and then they just never highlight the word no ever again. So we don't know when they're referring to the keyword. It's like, it's, maybe not going to achieve what it was meant to achieve. But overall, this section and the sections that follow it, very big changes to wizards, really. First rule, which I absolutely despise, is miscasts. Miscasts, absolutely hate.
It's just a silly little rule.
It stops you casting any spells for the rest of the phase, though, right? You did read that bit, didn't you?
Yeah. Okay.
Stop you casting any spells for the rest of the phase. So, let's say you go and buy your big wizard that can cast loads of spells, or even your 2-cast wizard or whatever. You roll a double 1, you get no spells. It's awful. Critical success and failure just sucks. Particularly critical failure. It's just never good. It's never a positive play experience. It's never like, oh, it's so cool that I accidentally, if it was just take D3 mortals, I wouldn't care. But like, can't cast any spells. It's just bad. And like, for all the reasons why you might consider taking something like Nagash, maybe just, even though he's at a bonkers points value, he's got lots of new things out of this edition. You roll a double 1, which you're going to roll statistically like once a game, and you can't cast any more spells. It's like it's backbreaking for expensive models. Yeah, it's just horrible. Why is it even there?
Ian, they've always had miscasts. They forgot to put it in for a couple of years. They have to bring it back.
Make them take D3 mortal wounds. Sure. Why do they need to cast no more spells? Absolutely awful, non-interesting, boring.
My gosh.
So bad. I take it back. Coherency isn't the worst change. This is the worst change. Absolutely terrible. Like, I hate it. I hate everything about it. And like, in seriousness, I don't really see why we needed this. This is a rules bloat rule for me. Didn't need to be there. Doesn't add anything to the game. It's a bit boring. Unnecessarily punishes some models that didn't really need to be punished. I don't think it's a very good change. But whatever.
Fair enough. Didn't expect that one about that passion around the miscast side of things. So that's fair enough. I don't push Nagash around though. So what can you do?
Neither do I, since that rule exists. So all good. Spell changes.
Yeah, there's a lot. What else we got here? We've got God. There's so much in this bit. Where do we start?
We're onto the different spells now. Really, nothing's changed in terms of the way wizards work or anything like that. We got new Arcane Bolt.
Yeah.
So this is a really cool new spell. This is like super clever. You cast it. It's only got a range of 12, but it's any phase until the start of your next hero phase. You let it go, which is great. It's like cool. I'd never thought of that. I like it. Yeah. And you either do one mortal stuff within 12, or D3 mortals stuff within 3. So you get a 2-cast wizard. You go and charge in. You do 4 mortals. On the charge. Oh well, no, it doesn't work like that. You can't cast it twice. I'm thinking in a gash and scaling it down. But you get a wizard, you cast it, you charge, and you do some mortals. Maybe he's a monster and he stomps as well, and then you go and have a fight, and it's cool. Or it just gets round the problem of if you give stuff too much range, it turns into a sling and magic at each other game. It gets around that problem. Make it shorter range, but make it like reactive a little bit.
You know, you're always desperate to finish a model off, and you've sort of got it like saved up. You know, all the combat's gone, everything's happened. It's like, all right, Zach, you know, we've got him now. You know, and then you hear a feed, you might get to try again as well.
Yeah.
So
it makes you commit your wizard a little bit, which is cool. Yeah. And then Mystic Shield +1 save. You know, like amazing, brilliant. Yeah. Also achieves the goal, I think, is also clear throughout this book and hopefully clear through future army books as well, as with less rerolls.
Yeah.
Just to make the game a bit good. So, yeah, it's, good spell. Much more powerful than it was before.
Yeah, definitely.
Just good, yeah.
All right, endless spells.
Endless spells, yeah. So, what's my favourite change in this section?
I don't know what is.
You can move through them now.
Oh right, yeah.
That's my favourite change.
You know what? I didn't even know that.
Yeah,
that's
you can move models across or through an endless spell as if it were not there. Yeah,
I missed that bit.
So, yeah, so that's brilliant. I love that change. Should have always been like that. Should have been an FAQ as soon as someone spell blocked an army. That should have been FAQ'd, but like, you know, we've got there, so good.
Nice. The spell on them in each phase.
Yeah, you can. That's a little bit weird, and I actually don't know if that's intentional.
At the start of the phase, each player can attempt to dispel one endless spell with each friendly wizard and priest. The player whose turn is taken place makes all other spell attempts first.
Oh, actually, no, it's actually obviously intentional, isn't it? I haven't actually read that.
If a wizard attempts to dispel a spell, they can attempt to cast or unbind one fewer in the next hero phase.
Cast or unbind one fewer, so you can. So yeah, so you lose something.
Yeah, so you're debating like, do I want to dispel in their turn or not? But then you give it them back to cast again, don't you?
Yeah.
Is that right? The same player?
No, an endless spell can't be summoned again in the same turn. It's removed from play either.
Okay.
So if you dispel it in their turn, that you actually stop them casting it again.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. And priests can now natively dispel endless spells, which is cool. But there's a few priests. There's not many priest models in the game, and some of the few that there are can already actually do this.
Really? Yeah.
Yeah. Or have artifacts that let them do it that are specific to priests or whatever. So it's kind of weird to make this a native ability. I don't know whether that means they're going to be able to do it twice, or what. But yeah, I mean, it's cool, I guess. It's just it's good that priests are now part of the core rules as well, rather than
I like all that. That's tacked on thing.
Yeah. I hope there's a faction of priests. I love priests at some point.
Yeah, that's it. They've cleared up what the wizard unit of wizards is as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's really good. And then predatory endless spells. Obviously, this is quite a big change.
Yeah.
They move in both turns now, which is a big buff to these. And before you move them,
rewrites on this lot, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, there was a screenshot someone posted of the General's Handbook index page,
right?
And it's got a load of war scrolls for endless spells in it, like and Balewind isn't there, so everyone's assuming it's getting
And we've seen cogs get rewritten already in an article or something.
Yeah, it's gone down to +1 move now. Yeah, so when you control an endless spell now, when the endless spells are about to move, which you do both hero phases, if the wizard that cast it is within 30, he gets to move it. Still, so endless spells are now a lot better.
Yeah, a lot.
In that way, and if they're not within 30, they're wild, and then that works the same way as it used to. So all the controlled ones move first, starting with the player whose turn it is, and then all the wild ones move, which is cool. Now there's some super interesting stuff with this, because like Stormcast have got an ability that moves an endless spell, right? Which to date's never been very good. But now, if someone flings an endless spell at you and you move it out of their control range, it means next turn they can't control it anymore, which is like kind of funky.
Yeah, that's
right?
good. That's good.
it's interesting. Like I don't know how much you actually buy that guy, but it's the Knight Arcanum is actually pretty decent as well. What do you think of these changes?
Yeah. How good are endless spells? Yeah,
I guess it depends on
some of them. There's a lot. They do a lot now. Like a lot of splash mortal wound damage, can't they? Geminids cannot be how it is, right?
I mean, presumably not. Like 2d3 mortal wounds every hero phase, and some -1 to it and -1 attacks, which incidentally doesn't have a stacking penalty. -1 attacks.
Yeah, true. Yeah, but we can't stack that one anyway. But
well, I've got a spell in death, haven't I, that gives you -1 attacks. So like I'm like, oh, I can still stack that in Geminids and make it a complete. That's why it's relevant to me. I mean, I think they got a lot better. I think it's good that they're limited to 3 because this would have made them way too good.
Are they limited to 3 as well as 1 per wizard when you take the list, or is it just 1 per wizard?
Yeah, the match play section's got a cap on them as well.
Okay.
It's in the actual table now, along with all the units and stuff. Is that in this book, or is that just a potato cam?
No, it's in this book. It's in this. It's further on. I don't know if it's in the PDF, but it's in my hands.
Yeah. It's hard to keep up. What's in? It's hard to keep up with what's on in potato cam and spoiler videos and everything else. But they're also limited. It might have been 4, I forget. They're also limited in number as well. So, which is probably good because they're really good. And if they're pointed right and they still do roughly the same as they used to, you're going to take these now, right?
It's 3.
You're definitely going to.
Yeah.
Is it 3? Yeah, you're definitely going to.
I'm desperate for this Falanath ones for the weekend. I'm desperate, because you have to be able to see them to control them and stuff like that. I was interested, the woods and the wild woods, being able to move my spells and hide them so you can't see them to dispel them, and I can keep control of them, or summon woods and take you out of control of your spells or stuff like that. So I was quite interested in using them. I thought there's some stuff that might be quite cool with them. So.
In the last 18 months, there's a lot of endless spell war scrolls that have completely dropped out of my head, as to what they do, because they've always just been unplayable, like the Night Haunt ones, as an example. But there's going to be some endless spells now that you're going to probably go and look back at and will actually be worth taking, because some of them were okay. Like the Night Haunt Vault of Souls was not a terrible endless spell.
Yeah.
It was just if the army had been played more, and someone probably would have played that at some point. And now that you actually get to do stuff with them, some of the ones you've never really seen before, you will see now, I think. So it's good. I like these changes. I think it's a shame that the advantage for second turn thing has gone.
Let's face it. Slip my mind.
And you're going to say that? Yeah, it's a shame that
you expected me to say that, didn't you? Because I always.
I was expecting you to say that. Yeah,
I forgot that.
It is a shame that that's gone, but ultimately, no one was really taking endless spells anyway for that outside of Geminids, pretty much.
Yeah.
So, if it wasn't actually changing the game because the spells weren't good enough, I think it's all right. And, once someone casts an endless spell and then you just shoot them off your board with your million guns that every army is going to want to take now, then you'll still be moving them wild anyway. So.
When they introduced a cap as well, it dropped off. That type of stuff happening as well. It wasn't around as much, that part of the game, so it was only, 1 or 2. You weren't alternating and doing loads of them. So I think it was maybe a bit of a flash in the pan sort of part of the game, bar Geminids. But I like that. Geminids was just a massive defensive thing. If they chose to go against you and you got to move Geminids, it was, I've got all out attack, all out defense, I've got these things to protect myself with, It's one of the things that made Geminids so good, and it did really help with that, passing the turn back and forth side of the priority roll. So,
priests as well.
I don't know how much I want to dive into all the priest stuff. They've basically made everything that was already there core rules now, haven't they?
Sort of, but
with one-offs and caps and
stuff
like
they've every priest can chant one prayer they know in your hero phase. They know 2 core ones now, and they know the ones on the war scroll and the ones on invocations in their army, which they've turned into endless spells now, basically. But what they don't say is for stuff like Khorne, when they also know the ones like on their prayer table, whether they can cast those as well, because that's like a separate rule in the allegiance ability itself. So I think we'll have to see some FAQs as to whether they've actually been nerfed to one from any source whatsoever, which would make sense because the priest rules have just been all over the place traditionally, right? It would make sense if they just use one, just like wizards. But depending on how the FAQ it, you might get some of them still that are able to use more than one.
I think it's one, right? Do you feel like it's a one?
Again, I mean, I never have any opinions on these. If it's not written in such a way as it tells me one thing or the other, I just have no opinion on it until it's.
I'm with you. Yeah.
Like,
I think it's a one, but so they've added two.
I also think it's one, and I think it would be better being one because even though that nerfs a bunch of stuff I like, it makes sense with the way wizards work.
Some of them done so much stuff, like the fire
the Khorne one.
You know, we'll do an endless spell, we'll do reroll all wounds, we'll do +1 armor save, you know, and it's the same for Khorne. And they did a lot for how many points those models were compared to a wizard.
Yeah. So they got some core prayers now. Bless, like on a 4-up, range of 12. A unit gets a 6+ wards. No, whatever. It's not very good. And smite. This is really interesting.
I love this one. It's so cute.
I read it like 3 times to figure out what it did, and I was like, oh, it actually does exactly what it says. Casts on a 48-inch range, an enemy priest takes 1 mortal, and if you roll a 6, it's D3. It's absolute garbage.
I love
the chance you're ever even going to use it is almost nil. But you know, it's good that like your priest trying to kill it. It doesn't even do any damage. Like, what? It should at least, I don't know. It's crazy.
You're just praying to God. What's this? Why, God? What's this guy doing over here?
Kill him. I love how it's got a 48-inch range.
Yeah.
Right? Like, which is just crazy in this game to have something with that range. But then it's just like, just does a mortal or maybe D3 if you're lucky.
The priest calls upon the gods to vanquish a heretic. See, I can get behind this one. Pray more, pray harder. Yeah.
Yeah, that one, I'm down with that. Yeah, praying harder definitely works.
Absolutely.
We got invocations work the same ways they basically did already, except now they're core rules. You can banish them within 48, which is a little bit of a change, but largely they're just the same as they were before for most armies. And then I guess monsters.
Yes. So I'm so behind on these things. Yeah. So
section 21.1.
21.1. We referred to this already.
Yeah. So, what are we thinking about this then?
I think one of them is absolutely amazing. So, like it is quite a little bit of a buff to monsters, this, isn't it? So, there's
I actually don't think this is very impactful.
Really? Yeah.
Like, really. I think the hero ones do a lot more than these ones. Like, I think the
more than raw.
I think raw is good, but you can't do any of these more than once in a phase. So it's only once. I think that raw is good, but it only works on a 3+, so it's inconsistent.
Yeah.
And I think all the rest of them are like, you know, niche. Like Stomp, 2-up D3 mortal wounds. I mean, that does stack up nicely for some monsters that have already got it. You know, when now you're doing 2 D3 mortal wounds at the start of combat instead of D3, you can bracket an enemy, and well, no, you can't do this on monsters, but you can bracket something that's not an enemy monster. You can maybe finish a hero off or whatever. It's all right, but it's not. It's a bit edge case for it to be actually amazing. Titanic Duel.
It is good.
You get +1 to hit, but like they're a monster as well. So the net impact of that for me, I'm looking at it, I'm like, you know. If you're going first, it's good, but if you're not going first and it's the other phase and it's only against another monster, so again, it's not that niche, but it's not common. And then Smash to Rubble, like it's like an extra random rule that monsters get.
Yeah, it's one you're going to leverage to slingshot your models across the board, eh?
Yeah, maybe if you get that chance to do it, but I just don't think these are that impactful. I think that they've all got like niche use cases other than raw, which you're just going to use all the time.
Yeah.
Which to me is just a little bit like monsters have gained the ability to roar, and sometimes some other stuff.
Yeah,
like which
plus one to hit against another one's all right. So I'm good in moving past all this, just explaining war scrolls, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, straight down past all
there
that.
We missed, then
None of that makes. I don't think there is. I think there's so section 25.5 when we get to battlefield roles, I think is the next relevant thing. Yeah, 25.5 on page 31. And they've clarified this now. When your battlefield role changes, it replaces what you had before.
Oh yeah.
And it stays like that for the whole battle.
Yeah.
Even if the conditions change, like this is questioned a lot. There's some things
lost behemoth, lost frigates and stuff like that. Yeah.
I forget what army it's in.
Doesn't mean anything though, because we don't know what the missions are, so.
Well, no, but there's at least one army. I think it's one of the destruction army that has a bit of a problem with because they didn't get the FAQ clarification that they lose behemoth when they gain battle line. Yeah. So it's nice to just have that cleared up with how conditional battlefield roles work, which is good.
Yeah.
And then we've got a new little thing that I guess we're going to see in future books called single.
What have you got here? What's single?
So this is 25.6.1. When a unit has the single type, it can't be reinforced, which I think is an interesting new thing. So we might be seeing like super elite units now that come in a 5 and just can't go any bigger, which is like interesting. I don't know why you wouldn't just say. I think what this might mean is they're moving away from minimum and maximum in the points charts, because now we have a unit size and you can either go double or triple if your battle line, right?
Yeah.
And we've got the single rule, so they don't need those columns of minimum and maximum anymore.
Okay.
And that presumably makes sense, because I imagine they're going to change the minimum size on a lot of units, like Chaos Warriors, right? Like they were 5 to 30. Graveguard, they've already done it with. They used to be 5 to 30. So I think a lot of the units are going to double in their base size now, and then it'll just be single. So that's interesting.
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I got distracted. I was reading chat and my PDF was over it, but
yeah. So well, I guess we're into battalions, aren't they? Yeah, there's some of the terrain makes a difference, some stuff. We're into battalions now, which is quite a big change.
Massive.
Yeah. So although it doesn't say it directly, pretty much says that you can only use old school style battalions when you're specifically told you're allowed to use them, which is presumably going to be never in match play.
Yeah.
So now we've got core battalions instead. And yeah, we've got core battalions instead, which is a.
Can I talk about War Scroll battalions? Because I'm really going to miss them,
Yeah,
I'm really going to miss them. Like, I know they're not. They're wrong, right? Some were better than others. They felt very narratively made, didn't they? Some people had stuff, some people didn't. What does Ben Johnson say in his things? The haves and the have-nots, that's it, wasn't it? Not everybody had access to the same amount of things, particularly around drops was a big one, wasn't it? So it was something that was never really right. But I didn't half enjoy, getting to that part of the book and seeing what they put together. And, it was a bunch of rules that have gone now that we used to get in the battle tome. So I'm going to miss them in a lot of ways, but yeah, it's for the best.
I think it's a shame. I think it's a real shame as well. I think, you can say that we have said a lot of times, battalions are never balanced. It looks like, they're just always so random. Yeah. But you could say that about every...
Sorry, and I remember at times we're like, oh, is this the direction they're going in now? And then it's like
but then the next book would have a complete...
12 drops in the next book. Yeah.
But the shame of it is that you could say that about every unit in every Games Workshop game. You could say, why aren't these balanced? Like, what I would have loved is if they just balanced them. I just put more effort into them, or maybe come up with a standard template similar to this. So like every book got like something that had the same pattern one hero, two battle line, one monster, whatever. Even if you have to go to that length, but getting rid of them seems like a shame to me.
I think Daniel's Star just said in the chat though, we're gonna get something right. I would agree. You know, like I said earlier on, where like, do they get their own heroic actions, their own monstrous abilities? Will they get their own, you know, core battalions in books? We've already seen some of the General's Handbook. So yeah, I do think we'll get something more from it.
Yeah. So should we talk about these then? About what they do. So we got the Warlord Battalion.
Yeah.
It's your Warlord, 2 heroes, and a battle line unit. Dead easy to make.
Yeah.
Obviously, you can only have one of them unless you've got something that lets you have an extra Warlord, which we've seen a lot of in the Death Book.
No, that's not right.
Why is it not right?
Because the commander is just a leader. So you're getting tied up. Warlord's the name of the battalion. It's got nothing to do with having a warlord.
I actually just misread what the icon meant the first time I looked at this. I just read commander as warlord.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, yeah, okay. Yeah.
So the big guy on monster is any leader versus not monster leaders.
Wow. Yeah. So all my armies I've written are actually still legal, as it turns out, but like I completely misread that part. So yeah, a leader.
Oh yeah.
Two leaders that aren't on monsters, and any unit that isn't a leader, artillery or battle line unit.
Yeah,
they're easy to fulfill. Also, the far and away best one of these 6, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Unless you're going to do something really, really combo-y, really polar with being one drop, or absolutely cannot be forced to go first. I think Battle Regiment could overtake in those circumstances. And again, you know, how much you need to compete with being low drop against armies out there that are that polar. And the meta will change that. But I think if we just read them on paper, I love Warlord.
Like I think the other 4 all get one command ability once a game, whereas Warlord gets 2 things. Warlord gets an extra enhancement, and it gets an extra command point, so it can be any ability, and it's better on 2 levels.
I think the other ones, though, for me, the other ones let you use them twice, in my opinion. So you see where you got expert on which one, line breaker. A unit from this battalion can receive all-out attack or all-out defense command ability without the command being issued and without a command point being spent. So I think you can have 2 units get all-out defense.
Because you don't forget, you can't issue or receive more than once in a turn. Yeah, but it says
the
you
command
can
being issued.
Yeah, but it uses the receive keyword still though.
So don't put it on a unit that's already got it.
Oh, sorry, I see what you mean. You're not saying you can stack it. You're saying you can actually use the same command twice in a turn once a game. All right, yeah, fair enough. Yeah, good.
Don't know if I think it's better, obviously, but
it's still not better than getting an extra enhancement. Get an extra enhancement and a command point. But you know, you're right. Yeah, I hadn't really factored that one in. I think the one where you get to use all-out defense an extra time in that case is actually a contender for me. Unfortunately,
it's the big monster one though. So
yeah, but that can actually be good because you know a lot of monsters have got 3 up saves, right? So getting to make 2 of them 2 up saves in the same turn can give you a really powerful turn.
Yeah.
Or getting to give 2 of them. A lot of monsters, certainly a lot of monsters like in Death, for example, but others tend to have like bad to hit rolls and good to wound rolls, like Bloodthirsters, 4s and 2s. And getting to use a double +1 to hit on 2 of them could be good as well. So I think that's actually puts them up a little bit. But the Warlord one's still the obvious best.
Yeah. I think the lists that we've got on Saturday, I've chased double Warlord, so I've took it twice. And you've got Warlord and just can get Battle Regiment in. So you're just like you're at 5 drops, which I think is another situation you'll see quite a lot.
I think that'll be the most common setup. Actually, most armies aren't gonna want to take 6 heroes And investing 4 heroes to get both of them is actually not great for a lot of armies either. But I think you will see a lot of armies pushing 4 so that they get the warlord benefits, but also get because old battalions have gone now.
Just to take whatever second battalion, but there's a good one in the General's Handbook as well, though. The one which just like full of lads that get immunity to roar and stuff.
Yeah, I think because the old battalions have gone now, if you take the battle regiment in your army even just once, you're probably going first most games.
I think you're on a dice off most games.
Yeah, well, or you're on a dice off depending on if everyone takes it or not. But you're going to go first against people who don't take it, people who chase double warlord, or people who take the other things. And then your thing is, like you said before, am I going to go double battle regiment? Does my army even fit in double battle regiment to make me go? To make me go first. So I don't think there's a million.
Change it out, like where they've got because quite common people will have 2 monster heroes, right? You can't take warlord and battle regiment and have 2. Well, you can have 2 monster heroes in that case. But I mean, battle regiments, can't have it, or another one needs to go in the warlord detachment. So your warlord detachment goes to 5, adds 1 drop on. Goes to 5 and then 6 drop or something. I think there's bits of matter. There's not. Yeah.
I don't think there's a lot of choice in there. I think you will see. I think the most common thing you're going to see is definitely like warlord battle regiment, like without a doubt. And I don't think there's actually a lot of choice in here. Unfortunately, I think I don't know why Warlord not only had a mostly better ability, but also a second one seems a bit weird. But, it's something to play around with. It's less complex. I guess one good thing from a new player point of view is...
For me, it was are we going to be one?
Everyone else's battalions.
Or are you going to take stuff?
Yeah.
That's what it felt like to me.
Now you've pointed out that the command can be issued more than once now because of that change. I do quite fancy the line breaker one quite a lot, though.
Yeah.
For any army with monsters loves +1 to save twice in a turn, or +1 to hit, depending. Like if it's Stonehorns, you got your charge, you got your murder turn in where you're going to take their army off the board. Or you've got your giants turn where they're first coming into your giants who are all 30 models, and you're going to keep them high on wounds or alive for another turn to put your opponent in a hole. Or there's loads you can do with double +1 save. I do like that.
Look, free. There's some here. We've got more in the General's Handbook already. You've got to see more in Battle Tomes, you presume, as well. Then, right?
I still don't know because it says core, right? It says core battalions, but it doesn't say that you can't.
Not called core, or?
I don't think so. I think. Whether they are or not, the rules definitely leave it open though for what other battalions we might get. Maybe they just want
a good point. Sorry to interrupt you, Ian. The last one will be Warlord on drop, so that's a little cute touch in it. You know what I mean? You want to be 4, not 5.
I'm not following. Sorry.
So the Warlord, you have to have minimum 4 units in. The Commander on top, minimum 3.
If we're at absolute minimum units and you want to go line breaker battle regiment, of course. Yeah, of course.
Well, you want to go battle regiment Warlord versus battle regiment Entourage. Battle regiment Entourage beats battle regiment Warlord on drops.
Yeah.
To give up a command point once per game. That's a good point. Yeah, I've never seen that one. There's some more little subtle things come out.
Yeah.
I guess I like these personally. I think it's cool.
I like them as well. Yeah, I it's a shame for the loss of the old ones and all that, and I would have rather seen it. But it's good. There's less to remember as well. People don't have to know another set of someone's rules that aren't on the war scrolls that they maybe have in front of them or whatever.
Here's the list. What have you got? A Warlord and Battlement. Okay, cool. Yeah. That's sweet. Right. Okay. Right. Enhancements and that. So they've reworded everything we've already got with enhancements, right? And rolled it all in.
Yes.
That's a fair way to summarize it. So your army gets one of every enhancement, which is just like it always did. Everyone gets a prayer. Everyone gets a spell, one command trait, one artifact. You get all that stuff. And then you unlock
the only
more.
change now. The change now is that when you get a bonus enhancement off the battalion, all your wizards can know an extra spell.
Yeah.
Or all your priests can know an extra prayer. And obviously they've added triumphs into it now.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a gamble because you don't know what your opponent's points are going to be, but
yeah. No, you just get the triumph now. That's your enhancement. Each time you take the triumph enhancement. So you can,
but it can only be
your...
used if the points total of your army is less than that of your opponent's.
Is that what it actually says in the triumphs? I don't think it does it?
So you pick a triumph for your army, but you only get to use it if your points are less than your opponent's.
Right. Oh yeah, I didn't read that as a second qualifier each. Why would you? Right. Okay. Yes, you do get to pick it. So yes. Okay. So you can pick an extra triumph, but you won't get to use it all the time.
Yeah.
As well. I mean, that's cool. I think that make a lot of armies, particularly with some bad books or when you've got a lot of named characters where you just don't need your artifacts or there's nothing to do with them. And therefore, and a lot of armies you would put together in the past with a battalion and you'd be like, I've got nothing to use this extra artifact on. And now you can just take an extra triumph or an extra spell if you've got.
I guess if you haven't got artifacts you take though, you're probably trying to avoid warlord, you're probably trying to stay in battle regiments, aren't you? Then, it's...
Well, I guess it depends on unless you want an extra spell, access to an extra spell.
Oh yeah, of course, yeah.
With the new stuff you might do. So, maybe not perfect. But it's interesting. Yeah.
We've got some universal command traits. I don't know when we're going to see them played, so we won't go past them. Some universal artifacts of power. You got a 5+ ward save. You got
there's one universal command trait's good, which is reroll a cast and roll once per hero. Cast and dispel or unbind them once per hero phase.
Yeah, but you're locked into a faction, aren't you? So I guess if you can get out of it, fine.
Like death, for example, aren't locked into a sub-faction command trait anymore.
All right, okay, cool.
There's nothing in there. There's still a few armies hanging around like that, right? That aren't locked into one. So that's that one was relevant for me. The rest of them are all terrible. But yeah, universal artifacts of power, much more relevant.
Yeah, you got the 5+ ward, like I've just said. That could be good.
Yeah, 5+ ward. +1 to wound on a weapon is also good, depending on. Not always, but on some things. The ability to become a wizard is now very, very good because the spells... I mean, even just you take your average guy and just give him Mystic Shield now is great.
Yeah.
But reroll heroic recovery rolls for the bearer is just terrible.
That's good.
Shouldn't even have to roll in the first place. Universal spell, flame and weapon, +1 damage to one of your weapons, and it only casts on a 4 as well. You combine that with the Arcane Tomb, you basically just give any character in the game +1 damage on the weapon now. It's not actually particularly degenerate. Like people are like, oh, it's really powerful. When you go and do the maths, most things don't actually get that much. There's very few heroes in the game. You're only picking one melee weapon, don't forget, not all of them. There's very few heroes in the game that have got a single attack with more than like 4 or 5 attacks.
Mm-hmm.
So 4 or 5 extra potential damage total for your artifact and your spell. Not incredible. A little bit overhyped that. But some things like Vampire Lord on Zombie Dragon, for example, Nagash, maybe like all these different people who might want to use that. It's certainly something you would stick on them if you were trying to make them better in combat. And certainly something I'll be using. Levitate's good.
And Ghost Mist's good. So Levitate makes a unit for a unit with an 18 fly, and Ghost Mist means you can make a terrain feature, like a line of sight blocker, basically. I think flame weapons, all 3 of these are bloody good.
I like Levitate's good, but it casts on an 8, which is a bit of a hard sell.
Yeah.
I actually don't think Ghost Mist's very good because it's only got a range of 6. So if it had like a range of 12 and you could pick something in the middle of the table and make a block line of sight or whatever, but
I didn't know the range is short.
You've got to be very close to that. So I mean, it is good, but I don't know when you would put that on your army list. Because the chance of it coming up
I
seems.
think I need to go back and take Levitate on my list on the weekend now. I think I forgot about that one.
Yeah.
I did think about Flame and Weapon, but nah.
Universal Prayers, Guidance on a 5 up, get a command point. Terrible. Cast on a 5. Not interested.
Yeah.
Heal, casts on a 3. Heals a model within 12 for D3. That's okay, bit short range though. The best one, the far and away best one here, cast on a 4, range 9, enemy unit within range, invisible. Bit short range, but you know it's workable. Whenever anyone rolls a 6 to hit the target unit, they take a mortal. It's like monster that. that's like a real monster.
Yeah. At least it doesn't stack though, right? You know, like they got the stacking thing in there, so to make sure that doesn't happen. So it's cool.
My first thought with this was how great the Frostlord, the Huskard on Stonehorn, who's a priest, is going to be now. Because now he gets to actually curse people and then melee them. Not that he's got enough attacks to make it work, but I like that.
You're a Triumph man, Ian?
Not anymore because the Savory roll's gone, so I'm not interested.
If you were an Artifact man or a Triumph man, you would be a Triumph man, wouldn't you?
No, not now the Savory roll's gone, no.
I think it's right to weaken these though, right? Like they were, I know you could build for them, but a lot of the time they were a bit randomly good, right?
I think the competitive community at large still never got onto how good these were ever.
Yeah.
And I think they were criminally underplayed for. But now they're not very good anymore. It's good to get rid of the reroll save because with so much access to +1 saves now, that would have just been way too good. But now it's the Battle Shock one is better now because you can stack it with Inspiring Presence.
Same with Bloodthirsty, you can stack it. Inspired really good though.
Yeah, Inspired is really good. Yeah, +1 to wound is really good.
Really good.
Yeah,
+1 to hit for shooting, +1 to wound for shooting. You know, these warriors of this army are filled with such conviction that they cut down their foes without pause or mercy.
I'll accept that for bows. Just
really?
Line.
I think that sounds worse.
Yeah.
That's but anyway. I would shoot people.
Yeah, it makes more sense than shooting harder, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That one's good, I think you're basically you're taking that one. Your Triumph is always the +1 to wound one, right?
Yeah.
You'll never take.
Yeah. I'm having that.
Like, I can't see any circumstance when you're taking.
I'd always want to stay under for a chance of
that. Yeah.
I don't know how much I'd go under, but like.
Well, certainly now that you're not rolling a random one anymore, and you're actually just getting one.
Yeah.
You know, it's
my combo is shoot with this unit at +1 to hit, +1 to wound, turn 1.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Or fight with them if you can get them in combat. So.
Turns out shooting's good. We skipped over the changes to the reinforcement rules in that big section about War Scrolls as well.
Yeah, we spoke about that. All right,
which is obviously very important.
Yeah, huge. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, huge. So obviously, you know, along with other changes in this edition, like coherency, that obviously drives you towards smaller units in general. And it means that you're more likely to take small units. The enemy's more likely to take smaller units, which means that you're going to have smaller units, maybe fighting a bit more on the table. You get 4 reinforcement points, though, right? In 2,000 points.
3, isn't it? Oh no.
Again, I don't know. I heard someone say 3, but I'm pretty sure the table in French that I read on Potato Camp said 4.
Can you read French? Can you read numbers in French?
I can read, yeah. It's the same shape as a 4.
Is it?
Mad.
Okay. This is 4.
I'm pretty sure it's 4. Yeah, so I originally heard that it was 3. Then I saw this picture and I thought it was 4. Then I haven't gone back and checked. I really like that 3. 4 just seems like it's not going to be impactful enough at making armies smaller. Because that's two 30 blocks, right? If you start and unitize at 10, that's 2 30 blocks.
Yeah, that's not far from how different it would be, and probably with the points increase, you might end up there anyway.
Yeah, like most armies used to go like, you know, you go 30-30, maybe you'd be trying for another 30, but sometimes you'd be like 30, 30, 10 or whatever, or some utility cavalry unit or whatever. I don't actually think that's actually as impactful as I sort of hoped it was going to be. And I was excited when I thought it was 3 because I thought it was really going to cut unit sizes down a lot. And now I'm not really sure that it is. But it will definitely in a lot of cases. I think the bigger change for this is for units that aren't going to 30, right?
Yeah.
It's for units that are like, it's for armies like Oryx that wanted to take lots of units of 10 or 15 men. It just isn't a viable build anymore. Or it's for units that previously had quadruple their base size, like Skinks, where they went from 10 to 40, which can only be 30 now.
Yeah.
And the other side of the change, obviously, is where you can't reinforce non-battle line more than once. If I want to take 30 Graveguard, I have to take a White King to make them battle line, so I can have a unit of 30 rather than being capped at 20. I think those, rather than the points themselves, are the more impactful part of the change.
Yeah. Right.
Barely affect zombies at all because they come in 20s. 1 reinforcement point makes them 40. I can still run 160 of them, and everyone will be miserable.
We've got I'm onto battle packs and whatnot now. A bit more of the army building stuff. We still got the same terrains that we were originally used to, the first bunch.
Well, yeah, they've changed a little bit. We've gone back to classic. We've gone back to classic 6 terrain now, haven't we?
The other ones were only ever in the General's Handbook, though.
Yeah, exactly.
So
yeah,
we've still
what I mean is they're gone now. Well, we might get some new ones, but I hope they're gone. Yeah, like we're just back to what we are, and we slight change to mystical. Mystical now gives you +1 for priest rolls as well.
Okay.
Which is good, but otherwise they're mostly the same. So I'm okay with this sound.
I've just turned the page to some studio collections. Ben Johnson's Sons of Behemat. I wish I got to have my armies took this pretty pictured. These are amazing. After that, we're going on to the match play rules.
Yeah, so these aren't in the PDF.
In this to show everyone?
They are not. They are not in the PDF.
All right. So, should we cover these, or do you want to do them when you do General's Handbook? We're sort of like doing half of it now, aren't we?
Yeah, let's talk about them next time, because also we've been talking for quite a lot of hours now, and I'm sure everyone's getting bored.
Yeah. And we're going to be playing on Saturday.
Yeah.
Anyway, using these rules. So we'll definitely chat about what we know Saturday with these match play rules. I suspect we might be finding out a lot of other rules, because I know content creators got General's Handbooks today, and I think Facehammer have been live for the last 2 hours talking about the General's Handbook. So I'm sure we're about to know everything about the General's Handbook.
Yeah, I believe the General's Handbook's all like fully spoiled now whilst we've been talking. So that'll be interesting, because we can come off this and go.
I've just opened Twitter, and the top tweet is Gemini went from auto take to auto take. So I can't wait to see what's on this.
They're probably just the same, except now you get to use them twice every round instead of once.
Yeah. I can't wait to see. Look, so guys, I hope we got across everything that we felt has changed this book and what we thought of it. I know from me, I'm really excited. I think there's loads of little changes, loads of little things they've added to the game here, and it's amazing. Yeah.
I think most of the changes are quite small, but quite a lot of them are quite impactful, like +1 save, reactive command abilities, more command points, and I think it's gonna be a very different game, like absolutely. And like I said at the start of the episode, I think sometimes even change for change's sake is just good sometimes, and we've obviously got loads of points changes coming in as well, changes to the missions and stuff and everything. So yeah, it's going to be a super different game. Really excited.
Like, I know, Ian, you've pulled out quite a few things you don't like there, but I know you opened the same as me. It's just different, right? Like, it's not the end. It's not the end of the world if some stuff's liked or not liked, or you do or don't. We've got a whole different game to play. I love change.
I'll play this for 3 more years and then we'll see something else, right? So
yeah,
well,
and you know, unless you or a very small minority of people, you're always going to read anything with this number of change, and you're going to like some of it and not like other bits of it.
Yeah.
But you know, the net of it is it's all like super positive. It's good changes for the game. It's going in the right direction. Stopping stacking, stopping stringing, stopping spamming 160 models unless you're using zombies. You know, like all these different positive things that change the game in a positive way. Some of it, obviously, which nerfs some armies, but is a net still a good thing. And yeah, I think it's going to make a difference. And although the rules are still definitely far from perfect, they are still better than they were.
Yeah,
there is a lot less ambiguity. There are a lot more things that will be easier in future for future army book release interactions not to break because of the way they were, which is a benefit all on of itself as well. So yeah, can't wait.
We're a competitive channel. We're into competitive play. We do obviously a lot of times we comment about newer players and things like that, or how it, you know, right or wrong, we think of everybody as, you know, we run a store, we interact with people from all walks of playing this game. The whole like where we open the show, where it's like the big change to how the rules are written, you open up with the player code, the differences to it. It's so much more made for us now, right? You know, they really shown that for me. It's like this is I acknowledge the competitive side of things so much more. So, man, I can't wait to play Saturday. And mate, I'm really excited. Right, let's wrap up. If you've watched this far, appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching all the way out. Guys, everyone who's joined us in the chat, give us some comments. You know, you've got some great things to think about, some really good points. If you're watching this back, you've got any questions, you disagree, agree with everything we've said, let us know in the comments. Love seeing them, love to get back to you. And most of all, this game is out on pre-order this Saturday, June 19th. If you've enjoyed this show, you've enjoyed the bat reps we're doing, you've enjoyed all the content that we've been putting out for you, please consider picking up your Dominion from us at justplaygames.uk. And yeah, we'd love it. So I'm going to say goodbye now. Thanks very much, Ian. Been great to get on and a pleasure to chat to you about it all as well. It's we haven't had a chance to get together and talk. So thanks for giving me 3 hours.
Yeah, you too. Thank you. Thank you, everyone in chat.
See you soon, guys. Thanks so much.